Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Eli Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. All right. Welcome, Moish.
Thanks for having me.
I'm sitting here with Moish Feiglin, a therapist, a breathworker, musician, and the founder of ÄCHO Healing. Cool. What's ÄCHO? What's the name ÄCHO?
ÄCHO is like a healing company that I started about 1.5 years ago. And the word comes from like the resonance. I love that word, echo. Like I'm throwing something at you and then I'm feeling like a reverb back into me. And also because of the music, and I work in the desert, which has that kind of like
echo.
The echo. So it kind of came together.
Right. Is it?
Yeah. And also, like, yeah.
The reverb coming back is something you're getting back from what you're putting out.
From what I'm putting out, and also like being able to feel what's coming from you in me as well. That's like there's something here that's like bouncing between us in the process of the healing or the coming together.
Right. In Kabbalistic terms, I think it's like ÄCHO or something.
Yeah.
Is that the term?
I think it's ÄCHO. In Hebrew, you call it hidhud, is the word for echo.
Right, but I'm saying Kabbalah is like an ÄCHO, like a light which returns.
Yeah.
Is like more powerful than
when you just send it in one direction.
Something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. It says, what does it say? It says like from our students we learn more than anything else.
100%.
Right? Okay, so you're recognizing that part of the exchange.
100%.
In the I don't know, in the healing dynamic.
Yeah, in the process. Yeah.
Okay, and then I saw also yesterday you called your event Tekes.
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 Yeah.
Tekes.
Tekes means ceremony in Hebrew.
Does it have the spiritual connotations also?
Yeah, so Tekes is any kind of ritual or ceremony. Like in Israel also you have like a secular, it could be a secular term. Like if you have a Tekes of like an army Tekes or like a high school Tekes could be like a ceremony, like an official thing.
Okay, like the baseball can have like the opening ceremony.
Yeah, exactly. Usually it's like can use in military or like in the national, but also in like the spiritual healing world, the Tekes is like a sacred ceremony.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because like oftentimes I think people on the outside of this work, when they hear the name ceremony, it becomes very triggering.
How so?
Right? The spiritual connotations of it. Like, oh, why does it be a breathwork ceremony? I'll breathe, but like, why am I entering a ceremony? Is it a church? Is it a religion? Is it idol worship? Like, what am I walking into? You don't get that?
From people?
Yeah. Maybe it doesn't have the same connotation.
I think like sometimes there's some confusion because we set up, there's some like ritual, like we saw last night we had this altar, mikdasha in the middle, and there's flowers and candles, and you're like, what is Zara? Like what's happening here? We're burning incense, like there's a central focus. So people can get a little unnerved, but I can frame it like we're walking into a sacred space, and you want to be able to create like the setting, the condition for that. Like you set the Shabbos table, and you have the Lechem Mishnah, and you have like the Shabbos candles. Like we have it, in our tradition. Yes. So it's not too like confronting, but for more like from people or like more Haredi people who come to some of the groups, it can be a bit like, what's happening here exactly?
Yeah. Right. Sometimes it could be the first dose of medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about that because we had Avi Wolf. He's the rabbi at the House of More, and he and I have been doing like once a month for bringing for a get together to have. The way he frames it is, real conversation for bringing. That's not just one person talking and everyone listening, but everyone gets an opportunity to share and to truly share what's on their heart. And the last one we did was in the same space as the one last night, and I think that just the altar there in the room created a different vibe. There was a certain intentionality. Someone came here and prepared before we walked in. It definitely gives an oomph to the space that's felt right away versus, okay, a few people sat down and plopped chairs down.
Exactly. Totally. I feel it. And people feel the sense of preparation. It's like there's something warm and inviting, and also sometimes these gatherings it can be uncomfortable. You can get anxious or fidgety, and like, okay, so there's a place where I can just rest my eyes, look at something beautiful, helps you keep grounded. And yeah, I like to bring like the ceremony aspects, even the breath work. We bring out a fruit platter afterwards, different things I've seen in medicine work. It's just so, I don't know, gives such a good feeling, that sense of home and warmth, that's I think a big part of it. Yeah.
Okay, bring us into your story, your background, how you were raised, how you got into this work.
Okay. So I'm from Melbourne, raised in the Chabad community. I'm one of six. I have four sisters. I have a younger brother. I have two older sisters, and there's me, and there's two younger sisters. Kind of look at that as sort of one family. Then I have my youngest brother's who has Down syndrome, so he came like later in the game, which is like probably a big part of my journey as well. But I grew up in Melbourne, small community, Chabad community. I'd say sensitive kid in a lot of ways. So didn't really fit the mold of whatever was happening in school. You know, it was like sort of sports focused or different kind of things. I was like the guy who was like in the library reading or in a corner somewhere. You know, I'd come home from school, like climb a tree and like sit there on my own. Only later, like I could sort of understand what I needed maybe. And then kind of fifth, sixth grade, like a kind of increased sort of frustration at the school and the system. It was sort of oppressive and archaic and the whole, you know, the old school kind of way.
What would that have looked like on the outside to someone else?
Well, very rule focused.
No, I'm saying for you.
Of what would it look like for me?
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know,
you said fifth or sixth grade it got
something started changing it. Well, you know, the first thing was like I started getting like angry, like a lot of rage, you know. It's hard to pick it now, but like I was feeling a lot of like anger and rage. And then school refusal, like not going to school, not doing work, not going to class, getting into trouble, kind of being a bit of a ringleader, you know, like against kind of like an us and them against the school kind of thing, getting into trouble, called in a lot. And then as it progressed, getting more and more kind of withdrawn, you know, 13, 14, 15, spent a lot of time in my bedroom, on my own, listening to music, you know, just kind of in, you know, introverted. And
were you already playing music by then?
so about, I think 14, 15, I started playing music. And that was a huge savior for me. I would sit in my room, just play guitar for hours and hours. And that was like somewhere where I could go and like kind of disappear to and with, you know.
Got it.
Yeah. And
question there.
Yeah, sure.
Were you a musician before that, or did that experience turn you into a musician?
Well, I come from a musical family. Like I learned piano when I was a little kid for maybe a year or two, but then I didn't practice. So my parents said either you practice or we're like stopping the lessons. So I just stopped, which I think was a good thing because like then I could pick it up on my own. So I think naturally I have like a musical sense, singing, that kind of thing.
And that brought it out.
And that definitely brought it out. Yeah. It became a huge part of my life. Yeah.
Okay, so at that age, it kind of saved you.
Big time, yeah. Saved me. I was smoking a lot of weed as well, like on my own. I was like doing a lot, like just being a lot, like kind of alone. And then I finished high school. Like I managed to make it through. And then I went to Israel, like when I finished school, which was a really important also part of like my trajectory. When I finished school in my mind, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to yeshiva. Like inside, I was kind of not really religious, even though maybe externally I didn't have the courage to kind of maybe come out of the woodwork. But I don't know. I had like these grand plans. You know, I was going to have this amazing summer. I'd leave home. I don't know. Like I was like ready to kind of break out. And all my friends were going to Yeshiva Gedola, which is like the Lubavitch Yeshiva in Melbourne. I didn't think they would accept me. There were even parents at the time like complaining that they didn't want me to come. I'd be a bad influence on their kids, you know, this kind of stuff. And for my parents, it was like, there's no way you're not going to Yeshiva. It's like, it's not even a thing. So one day my dad just comes into my room. He's like, okay, what about going to Israel? So I thought, okay, you know, maybe this is my ticket out of here kind of thing. So he's like, okay, so find yourself a yeshiva. And then he made this kind of deal, like if you're going to go, no summer, like after the finishing like 12th grade. I think they knew if I had that like summer after high school, I would never make it to Israel at yeshiva.
What does it mean, no summer?
Like you'll leave like 3 days after graduating kind of thing. Like this is like the case, yeah. And he's like, and I'm coming with you, you know, because I didn't think they'd even trust that I'd show up to yeshiva. So I found a yeshiva, like this modern Orthodox yeshiva, and then I went, and then it was very powerful for me to be in Israel. And
this is post-high school, so you're 18,
post-high
19.
school, yeah, I guess I'm running. But yeah, so No, I finished high school at 17, and 18 I was in Israel. This is 2001. The Intifada was going on, so a lot of terrorism at the time. It was like a scary time to be in Israel. Even had a few like near misses, like pretty significant shakeups, and that started, I think, to tickle some places inside me. You know, get some like existential kind of things happening to think about who I am and what I'm about and that kind of thing. And I ended up staying in Israel for 3 years. I ended up moving to Mayinot Yeshiva and getting into the Chabad stuff and Chassidus and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
You're saying like getting into Chabad stuff, that's where you came from.
I came from it, but I felt like a couple of things. Like, firstly, I felt like I never learned Chassid. Like in Melbourne, it's Chabad. I don't know what it's like now, but definitely then it's a Chabad community, but it's kind of, and I did Gan Yisrael, and there was a Chabad around us, but I didn't feel like I had any real sense of the inner side of Chabad, like of anything really talking, like or waking me up or really speaking to me. And in the first yeshiva I went to, which wasn't Lubavitch, there were a bunch of people that were like really against Lubavitch, and it like bothered me. And I couldn't understand why it bothered me, because I barely
In the modern Orthodox yeshiva.
yeah. And I was like, why do I even care? Like, I don't even care about anything like Jewish, you know? So why do I care about this Chabad stuff? And then like it was starting to like, okay, you know, like open me up to it. And I started to learn Chassidus for the first time, felt a sense of belonging, and it was a Baal Tshuva yeshiva, which was like a beautiful place to be.
Mayinot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where I went to. So to be around Baal Tshuvas is like a breath of fresh air. It's like, well, everyone's getting excited about this stuff, you know, and the Farbrengens, and it was very alive. So, you know, it really, that was like a kind of like maybe search for like an identity, and to really own that identity. So I really kind of gave myself over to it, and being in Israel and the whole thing was like really powerful.
Practically, are the rules different, say in a Mayinot yeshiva, for what they allow for a student versus in Melbourne? I'm trying to understand. I'll tell you where my questions come from. I'm trying to understand what the difference is between your experiences in high school, where you felt that it didn't have the Chabad Chassidic quality, and then suddenly you go to Mayinot, and you are feeling something. You're like tapping into the inner spirit, say, of Chabad. So was there, on the surface, was it different? Like, for example, did they allow someone not to keep Shabbos or not to have a beard in the Mayinot yeshiva? Were there rules that were different?
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's kind of like, it's all opt-in, so it's all by choice. You know, at the time they didn't even want me to come. Now they have like a whole like a track for people who grew up from. They didn't want any from people there, because it's like, you know, you bring the kind of the frequency down, because it's all positive charge, you know. So it's all opt-in. The rabbis are beautiful. There's no judgment. You come as you are. So it's all by choice. So that's like a real invitation to get into it and to learn and to explore and to develop that spiritual language.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, I was like, wow, okay, this is what I've been searching for. This is what I really wanted. Like, you have the conceptual knowledge, maybe the ideas, but then you have all these, you can't separate out all the figures, the oppressive figures, the people always telling you what to do, or be judging you, or whatever it is, all the stuff that happens in Frum communities. And then you're in like this Gan Eden. It's like these people that are beautiful and they love you, and it's like, it's happening, and it's like alive. And it's Israel as well, which has its own energetic, you know, quality. And I'm away from home. I'm a young kid. I'm like allowed to be myself. It was all kind of happening.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been thinking about this. I've mentioned it here on the podcast, but kind of briefly. But I think it's almost something that needs a full, like the breadth of the topic of choice.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the way I've shared it in brief? Is that God kind of gave us, right? Not kind of. God gave us choice. Right?
Yeah.
That's the gift of humanity. And then in some subtle ways, many try to take away choice from us.
Yeah.
And then wonder why we.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it because last week I interviewed a guy, Levi Shmatkin. Levi Shmatkin wrote a book, Letters for Life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty interesting book where he encapsulates, I say pretty interesting, it's an interesting book where he encapsulates his understanding of the Rebbe's message on emotional healing, mental wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes it through letters, but he shows very few letters, actually. He just kind of snippets of letters and tries to paint a piece that's fairly easy to read, digestible, etc. And in there, he quotes one part of a letter where I guess the person who wrote the letter to the Rebbe said something of, I don't know if I can, like, I'm not listening to everything you're saying, so I don't know if I could, correspond with you. And the Rebbe said, listen, I'm just giving you my understanding of the best for you, but you don't have to do it in order to continue like having exchanges with me.
To have the relationship.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know if he said the words or is what I understood is that, like, I'm not taking away your choice. I'm not going to emotionally blackmail you that in order to have a relationship with me, you have to do what I say. Like, I'm still going to allow you to be a human being with free choice. And you're asking me my opinion. I'm going to share my understanding of what I feel is best for you, but I'm not robbing you of choice.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of, like, also the difference between Mayanot and yeshiva. Like, how can it happen that yeshiva can miss the Chabad spirit? And as we're afraid, parents are afraid. I'm not blaming the yeshiva. It's everyone. We're all kind of afraid of giving someone free choice. What are they going to do with that choice?
Right. Yeah. And it's like, I see it like, even with my own kids, because I was raised, at least with Judaism's concern, it was so domineering. All the have tos and the shoulds, which creates a whole, set of like programming and, and shame and whatever the stories that come around it. So how do you educate the gift, which is, let's say Judaism, let's say it's a gift, a Masorah, right? A gift that you're giving, and keep it that it's a choice, because it really is a choice.
Right.
And it has to be a choice.
Yes.
That's what I believe. So it's actually a discussion I have a lot with my wife, because she didn't grow up Chabad. She grew up kind of modern Orthodox. In a lot of ways, she's a Baal Tshuva. So, we have this like sometimes tension. I can't force the kids to do anything Jewishly. Like, we have the basics that I kind of like expect, but it just fundamentally like goes against something inside me in a very, fundamental way. And it's a challenge, because the chinuch, like a lot of it is about repetition and reinforcement. This is what we do and blah, blah, blah. But then it's like, you're going to actually force someone to daven? That doesn't make any sense.
Right. Right.
It's the stupidest thing ever. It's like, what? You have to daven now. What are you talking about? So, but then you also want to teach your child like how do we daven, as well.
Right. I guess with children it's a little bit different, but I find that, I take my kids to school in the morning, and oftentimes I'll put on like some of the prayers. This is, I don't know, something on Spotify I find. So it goes to Shema. It's like, why do we have to listen to that? I want to do something else. So we don't have to. Like, what? I'm going to play it. Like, you don't have to say it. Right? You don't have to say it. I'll say it. If you want to say it, say it. Because why do we have to? Obviously, a song is more exciting. So I was thinking, how would I explain it to a kid? Like, how would I explain Shema to a kid? So I said, the reason we say it, I said, what we're saying is to keep saying this. That's what we're saying. We're saying this. Shema is to keep remembering that God is everything. I said, because sometimes what happens is we start getting scared of everything. As we get older, we're scared of bad people. We're scared of scary things happening. So instead of living a life afraid of everything, we keep reminding ourselves of this, that everything comes from one Hashem, and we don't have to be afraid of anything. It's like, could we deliver a message in a way that a kid can understand? If it doesn't speak to them, then why do it?
Yeah.
Several months ago, my wife decided I started keeping Shabbos. I don't want to say keeping Shabbos, very strong. I'm scared of that word, like keeping Shabbos. I was like, what do you mean you do this? I don't even know the laws. But I started being more careful with Shabbos over the last number of years. But maybe kind of the big thing was stopping using my phone, right? Let's say 3 or 4 years ago. And there were a couple times after medicine journey, seeing certain things where I came back home with like the force of, you know what Shabbos is? But by and large, I left it, and my wife did what she did. But over the last little bit, my wife is pregnant. We're expecting soon, and she just started keeping Shabbos on her own. And with the kids, it was kind of okay. We weren't doing it before,
right?
They weren't. So she started introducing it with, lighting candles before. She was also already doing that, but just introducing more. And then my daughter this week, she's 5. She said, my sons were playing. She says, I don't want to do that. I want to keep Shabbos also. And I thought we didn't put it on them. I don't know what they'll do or won't do, but there has to be a way to preserve it. My oldest son said, one point said, "Oh, what's going to happen if I turn on a light?" And I said, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, you'll turn on a light and the light will go on. Like, nothing is going to happen. But you have to think about what I said. You know, Shabbos is like a gift. And now we have a lot of the benefits of the gift. Like, that's why we don't have school every day of the week. If not for Shabbos, if we didn't know about Shabbos, we'd have school every single day.
Right.
I'd have work every single day. So imagine every day you went to school and I went to work.
Yeah.
So now, like, that's Shabbos. And then you want to say, okay, you want to turn on the light. It's fine to turn on the light. Like, it's not, the light's going to go on. Nothing's going to happen. But understand what Shabbos is. Like, Shabbos gave us all these.
Yeah.
The idea of Shabbos gave us all these things. So we keep remembering it so we don't go back to that. I mean, there has to be ways to explain it with
but even
not robbing kids of free choice.
Totally. And hearing your daughter's choice of words, like, I want to keep Shabbos, is very different than I should, you know, or I have to. And just, that's a beautiful thing to hear a child say, I want, you know, she's wanting what you want, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
But still at the same time, preserving choice.
Yeah,
I think it's very,
challenge.
very, very important.
Yeah.
I've thought of it also with people saying, like, how come the Rebbe didn't get involved in X, Y, and Z? Right. Well, effectively, he would have robbed people, like, one after another. He would have robbed people of free choice.
Yeah.
If he would have, like, made a public statement about this guy doing something wrong or that guy doing something wrong, the guy would have lost his agency in life.
Totally.
Anyway, whatever. We can go off on this.
No, I just think, just to bring it back to the Hasidus, like, I think in a way, I learned a bar mitzvah, I learned a few things, you know, growing up, but the fact that maybe, because Melbourne is not as Lubavitch as, let's say, Crown Heights or whatever, you know, with the learning. The fact that I got to learn it later, in a way, I had some choice there too. Like, I could experience as an 18-year-old with some fresh eyes, and it wasn't like, you know, another sikha, you know, which can be sometimes for young guys who are not into it. It's like, you know, I know that already. Dira b'tachtonim. You know, how many times can I hear it? You're like, wow, you know, this is amazing, you know. So it can touch you if you're open.
Right. When I was in, I liked to read a lot when I was in yeshiva, but, you know, we couldn't read a lot of books. I actually got kicked out of yeshiva at some point for reading an Ernest Hemingway book. I mean, it was a little racy. In their defense. And I did pass it to someone else also. So I was chayto machtas rabim. They have I'm not criticizing them for their decision, but regardless, a lot of what I found these Jewish books to read. So I enjoyed reading like Joseph Tlushkin, Dennis Prager, and I don't know, others, Aryeh Kaplan. And oftentimes I found that in explaining the differences between something, what was Judaism without Hasidism? What's Chabad? How is Chabad different than others?
Yeah.
Could make it very interesting versus it's the only thing we know.
Right. Yeah. Like, this is it.
This is it.
Yeah.
Right. And without the contrast, we often don't know what we're teaching. We can't understand it. We need good to understand bad. We need right to understand. We need colors to understand other colors.
Yeah.
So I found that also that the fact that I told someone I was once learning Rav Nachman. I had a chavrusa with someone Rav Nachman. How could you?
Yeah. You've like, you know, you had an affair, you know? Yeah. Yeah, with another Hasidus. Yeah.
Right.
The Lubavitchers get nervous about this stuff. Yeah.
Right, but then it was interesting when I came across Rav Nachman stuff recently, which definitely seemed to speak against materialism, against like that way of living. And clearly Chabad had a different approach to materialism. And then seeing, okay, there's that path, there's this path. We're seeing both in front of us. And there's validity to this path, and there's validity to that path.
And I think there was also a time where a person wasn't born, like a spiritual path, I feel is something you have to find and discover and keep, like, you know, being in touch with. It's not something that you were born with, like a spiritual path identity. Like, this is your track, you know? And now it's like, okay, so you maybe grew up this way, maybe you grew up Breslev or Chabad. Okay, this is my thing. But what if something else speaks to you?
Right.
What if there's something actually like this is what touches me? So is that like disloyal to like go and say, I need to follow like what's really speaking to me right now? So I think the whole point is like that choice. And in the early Hasidic days, there was like a whole range of options. And if you were drawn to davening, you went here. If you went after what you needed in order to like fuel your soul and find the person that could connect you. Yeah.
100%. Okay, good. I feel like we've done better justice to that concept of choice and the importance. I did use a term, emotional blackmail, which I think I should explain a little bit because I think many of us do it in different ways. These subtle punishments we deliver when someone doesn't do what we want them to do. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm not going to, a lot of us mete out punishments which is a way of robbing someone of free choice. Because you want a relationship with me, then you must do X, Y, and Z. And in the process, robbing someone of their agency,
Right, because they have to make a choice. Like, the other choice is, do I stay in the relationship, which is maybe the safest thing they have. So then they have to give up their own, a kid, or give up my own agency because I need to be with you. I'm not going to be without my father, or whatever it is. So
yeah, and then the anger forms. But when you mentioned earlier that in fourth, fifth grade, or fifth, sixth grade, you like some anger started bubbling up.
Yeah.
Was that your observation at the time, or is that now looking back, realizing that there was anger bubbling up at some of these rules?
Well, I don't know. Like, at the time, I definitely wasn't able to like link the story. What was the anger? What was it all about? But there was definitely outbursts of anger. Like, I would get angry. I would like smash windows at home here and there. Like, do things that like if my kid did that today, like, if I get really angry, I'd like I did it several times. Like, things are like a little bit crazy, like behaviorally. And I was probably more than anything like scared of it than understanding it. This like
Scared of your own anger.
Yeah, it was more like even rage.
Right.
And now I have more understanding that it's like I'm very sensitive. So like to be in an environment that isn't like really nurturing or supporting your sensitivity, it's just like, so something wants to come out and push back against it. And there was definitely like a deep knowing inside of right and wrong, and seeing like so much kind of like, no, like this is wrong, all these things that are happening around me and in the community and with adults, and being so powerless, and feeling that rage against that.
At the time, you were expressing the rage.
Expressing the rage,
okay.
yeah.
You're in touch with it.
That's
good, because oftentimes it becomes kind of there,
mm-hmm.
but many of us don't express it, and it's just this subtle rage.
Yeah.
I was asking that, connecting it to the emotional blackmail, that oftentimes in those relationships, an anger develops, but it kind of like swims underneath. Like no one's aware of it, but then one day it
just boom. Yeah. It's like, where did this guy come from? Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It bursts forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you use the word sensitive, you use it a couple of times to describe yourself. Yeah. Are you using it as a neutral term, a positive term, a negative term? What are you?
Now it's like more descriptive, I'd say. For a long time I would like relate to it in a negative way, like, oh, I'm so sensitive, like. And in the last couple of years, as I've been able to grow myself and work through a lot of things, starting to understand that it's a gift.
Right.
It comes with a lot, like it can be a big burden. And what I mean by sensitive is like feeling a lot of other people's emotions, feeling into things, there's a lot of feeling, a lot of open feeling, and can be overwhelming. There's a lot of overwhelm, and then why are you so sensitive? That kind of voice that could come against it.
Right.
And realizing, wow, okay, I'm sensitive. I'm not like, a big jacked up guy, like the grill guy. That's not who I am. I can like just like own my gentleness and sensitivity, and like it's a tool and I can use it, and it's a gift, and it requires a certain kind of maintenance, protocol in a way. It's like like I got a marshal from my therapist. He's like, there's some gardens that are like more wild style. You can let them grow. They're like low maintenance. It's like a certain kind of, and then there's some they need, they need to be more tended to, and it's like
dry clean only.
Yeah, it's like, and it's like, okay, all right. So that's like really having to learn that and understand where my place is in that, and what that means in terms of giving and working with people. And
yeah, I got a lot of that growing up, but maybe different, maybe not because I was actually sensitive, maybe because I was human.
Yeah.
But I got like, why are you so sensitive? Why?
Okay, yeah.
Why are you so sensitive? You said you're married to a Moroccan.
Yeah, she's Moroccan. Yeah, well, her mom's Moroccan.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know Moroccan people somewhere. I don't want to name anyone specifically.
Yeah.
So, sometimes in that culture, there's a certain like matter of factness.
Yeah.
To life.
I'll tell you how it is.
And what?
I'll tell you how it is.
Right.
Yeah.
There's less room for the emotionality, right?
Right.
Thing. My mother's Moroccan.
Yeah.
So it was like, why are you so sensitive, right? Like that question.
Right.
And then over time, like that definitely sat with me, that question for a long time of as was something negative.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually when I came into recovery from addiction, I started seeing like, oh, like addicts are just sensitive souls. Like this is what addicts are.
Yeah.
So I came up with this, I don't know, metaphor for myself of like some clothes are dry clean only. Like you have velvet and cotton. Would you say cotton is better than velvet?
Right.
No one would say that.
Right.
But it could go through a washing machine and the velvet will just get
just
completely destroyed. Like it can't be in certain places. I use that to understand like I can't go to restaurants the way others could. I can't I can't eat certain foods the way others could.
Right.
But I can't hang out in certain settings the way others could.
There's some things you can't do. Yeah, your marechet, your system is like it's tuned differently,
Yeah. I said to when I was early recovery and I wasn't sharing with anyone that I was, but I had some guys at work made a birthday for me and they had, a bunch of alcohol and they're serving and I was like, I'll take a shot, but like that's it. That's my I have a 2-drink limit. And like some guys were like pushing me hard. And I was like, I wasn't in recovery for alcohol, I was recovery for sex, but I understood that alcohol was not good. And then they kept pushing. So I was like, listen, I said, if I take 3 drinks, I'm sure I'm single. Like, I don't not for me. Something happens in my mind, and I just think I'm unencumbered somehow. So I don't go there. I don't do it. So I think that recognition, that's why I was asking how you said it, because but you said it like descriptive. It's neutral. It just is what it is.
Yeah. Well, this is like more recent, like really kind of trying to, I think at a certain point in my healing journey, there can be like, these protective layers. Okay, just do enough healing. Maybe you won't be sensitive anymore, like it's like another way to kind of bypass who you are or something, And it's like, no, okay, this like is a kind of, okay, this is who I am. And that's okay. And if can even move past them all, that's okay. It's a gift. And then that gift needs to be looked after and then it can be used it's helpful. So that's this is sort of the last little bit of time where I'm really trying to embrace it more.
Right.
Even say it out loud,
Yeah, it's definitely a strength, but I don't know if you've heard of this book, Fear Your Strengths.
No.
Right? It's in the title, right?
Okay.
You get the idea. It's like it's a strength, but this is what can kill us also.
Exactly, yeah.
Someone who's ambitious, it's a strength, but it could also be what kills them.
Totally.
So, good. Fine, you were taking us through your story. We were in Mayanot.
Yeah, in Mayanot. So I finished Mayanot Yeshiva and then went back to Australia, started university. So originally when I finished school, I was like enrolled to do like some kind of finance degree, like just whatever. It was either science or business. So, okay, business,
Where were you with Judaism at this point that you left?
No, now I was very like fired up. I was like, had a jacket, I was into it, a beard. Yeah, I was like, like even like fighting my parents, can't go to university. The Rebbe says, all that stuff. So I went to university. I signed up. I did a degree in counseling, social science.
By the way, I should say he was right.
About not going to university?
Yeah, he was right.
Probably.
Like, it turns out he was right. Yeah. You see what's going on now. I don't know how it is in the Australian universities, but in the U.S.
I'm sure it's not great, yeah.
But, he saw this coming.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway.
So, yes, I did a degree in social science, like counseling. I understood, like, okay, I want to be in the helping profession, Like, this is my direction, at least. I had, like, a direction. This felt right. It felt good. So I started there, and then in the course of that time, I met my wife. Like I would go back to Israel during my summer breaks. Like we met on one of those summer breaks, and got engaged.
She's from Israel.
She's from America. She's from New York.
But she was living there.
She was visiting. She was like, she had finished university. We were in the same place at the same time. We had some mutual friends. We met. It's beautiful. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. Like we met and we got engaged like 2-3 weeks later. It wasn't even a shidduch. Like it just, boom,
Nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to just, find the parts that would be, important. So yeah, then we went back to Australia. I like studying. Like I've been I continued university.
You said originally you started for a finance degree.
That's what I got accepted into. And then I switched and then I did this counseling degree.
Counseling means?
Counseling is like kind of therapy. They call it in Australia counseling. It could be like a high school counselor or like working in a hospital, kind of pastoral care, that kind of role.
But it's mental health?
It's mental health. Yeah, mental health. Then I went and did a graduate degree in psychology. And then I went and did my master's in social work. So that And during the course of that time, we had children, and I was working and in the community, and I also had a band. I did like simchas. I had a wedding band in Australia. Yeah, it was pretty popular. So that was like my side gig while I was studying.
What drew you to the psychology from finance to psychology?
So I think the finance, nothing drew me to the finance. That was just like my default, of like when I was in high school. In Australia, like you have to decide when you finish school what you want to apply to university. So that's what I applied for. That's just what I thought.
Oh, so you applied then, and then you go in a few years
into yeshiva, and then I was like, okay, I want to switch.
Understood.
I actually got inspired. Now that it comes to mind, I got inspired. One of the rabbis in Mayanot is a therapist now full time. He's left Mayanot. This is also like more than 20 years ago. That was in Mayanot. And I was inspired. He would teach Hasidus and bring in like therapy, and it inspired me. I think he was a big part of it. Like this
What's his
is
name?
Special. Rabbi Malkin, Yosef Malkin.
Cool.
You come across his name?
No.
He's a special guy. Yeah, helped a lot of people. So he would like practice a little bit while I was in Mayanot. Like you could sit with him in the garden, and you'd, do some therapy. So that definitely inspired me, moved me. And I think, now
Chassidus is therapy.
It's
more
right?
than therapy, but it's therapy.
It's got it in it.
I just say it's therapy. It's therapeutic.
It's definitely therapeutic.
Yes.
But there's another point, I think, that another strand in the story that I think is worth weaving in. I mentioned briefly my brother, having my youngest brother with Down syndrome.
Yes.
So there is, you talked about, what was the name of that book you said? The Fear
Your Strengths.
Fear Your Strengths. So a lot of us, like my siblings, we became helpers, professional helpers, and that was also part of our role in the family, with my brother. So like my older sister's a social worker, my other sister's a nurse, and I have two sisters who are teachers. Like we all kind of got into like the helping stuff.
And you feel like that's connected?
Yeah, because we were definitely recruited, to be active helpers, like with my brother, his care, and sort of co-parenting in a way, So it was a natural place for me to also feel a sense of worth, and self-esteem. That's like the shadow element that I think comes into therapy and healing work, where that's like, it can be really hidden. It's like in here, I can give, and it's virtuous, and it's beautiful. It's also real and it's beautiful. And that can also give like a strong sense of meaning and purpose, which is fine and good.
But it's not only giving.
And also if it's unconscious, then it can bleed into your work, and it can bleed into like, into the dynamics and what's happening inside.
In what way?
I think then you could have like real needs from your clients and from the work. You could be needing to help more than maybe what they're needing, or actively helping.
And what kind of,
like if I'm a helper because this is like a place that fills me up, and that's like it can be there. If I can include that element and be honest about it, like bring that shadow in, I think it's okay. But if that's like could be a core motivator.
Are you saying it's there for everyone, for you?
No, I don't know if it's there for everyone. I know It was there for me, like without really fully knowing,
Right.
for a long time. And in some ways maybe held me back, I was afraid about it. It's like, oh, am I doing this because I need something out of this, So like, it was like sort of hiding somewhere.
Right. Like a need to be needed.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah.
And, okay, so what's the risk, let's say, for the patient?
For the client. I don't know if there'd be a risk per se, like a damage risk, but I'm trying to think about what it could be, what it could look like.
A desire to keep them sick longer?
That could be, yeah. It could be that. It could be, what if maybe there's some therapists who have a dependency on their clients even, I don't know. Could be there. Yeah, to keep them in,
Right, not wanting to...
Not to move them through. I tell people when I speak to them, my first call, I tell them, our work is to put me out of a job. That's the first thing I tell them. Like I'll be here for as long as you need me to be. If it's 20 years, I want to be able to be here for you in this process, however long this is going to be useful. But the point of this is not that this is forever. I make that really clear at the beginning. There's like the Freudian model, which is like therapy forever, twice a week. It's a great business model, like twice a week for forever. But if you're coming back to the idea of choice and like agency, like ultimately a healing process, if we can facilitate it well, is like leading a person back to their own agency and inner healing capacity.
Right.
So that they should find out like, yeah, like I've got it, like okay, maybe you needed to help me over this bridge or over this valley or pull me through, whatever it is. But like, you're the healer, not me, that's the idea.
Or sometimes we need a spotter.
Yeah, you need a spotter.
Sometimes we need a spotter, but it's not
forever. Yeah.
No, I was saying like sometimes we may even need a spotter forever. Like we may need that role of a spotter forever, but it's not that person. That's why I find sometimes it gets dangerous. So it's like I have to ask my therapist what they think, like about what, about your business partner, about it. Like sometimes I feel like people bring them into a little bit too much of their life and very dependent.
Right, it's like outsourcing your power.
Yes, exactly.
It's like I have to ask you what you think, but what do you think? And if you don't know what you think, so let's like maybe work on a way that you can find out what you think. Which
Are there any? I guess in some way, wondering if there are any other risks from that dynamic. I mean, in some way, the if you think of the relationship as mashpia makabel, it's not a true mashpia makabel, right? Like the giver and the receiver. There's the taker, right?
Right, you're taking, right? Because you're needing to be needed.
Yes.
Yeah, and this like for me, this is like a big thing to overcome. Like, coming back to like also what you said at the beginning about the echo and the or choser. Like, I was once with one therapist, and this was this actual thing, this fear of mine, like I'm going to bring this need into, and it's going to somehow get in the way of the work. And even though I can't even articulate what's the risk, I know that energetically there's something
off.
There's something off about it, right? And it was a fear of mine. And I brought it up with this one therapist because it was a barrier for me to starting really a private practice and doing what I know that I really feel that I want to be doing in my gift and whatever it is and what I trained for. And he's like, do you think I would be here if I wasn't getting anything from this? Like, of course I'm getting something from this. And I was just like, like he just like reflected it back to me. Like, it's okay, but let's talk about it. Like, let's bring it out of the shadow. Like, and then when you can have something that's present and you can talk about it or understand where it's playing in or where it's like, leaching in or what you need to work through, then it can be okay.
Right. There's a difference between the way we phrased it earlier, a need to be needed.
Yeah.
Right. There's like qualitatively, there's a different vibration to a need versus I'm getting something.
Yeah. Oh, this is like enriching or rewarding or
yes.
Exactly. It's a whole, you see, it's like a whole different quality. It's like it's got a feeling, energy, quality difference to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, because then when we don't, remember the first sponsee I had in recovery and they relapsed. And I remember being like very, very disappointed very, very disappointed with myself. And I went to talk with my sponsor about it. I was like, if you're working with addicts, you're going to have to get over this one quickly.
All right, okay.
But just seeing how, like, my ego was all over that.
Right.
It wasn't about their process, their journey.
It's like your ability to help him stay sober
exactly,
or something.
Yeah,
exactly. And that can come in, that can come. You can have these times where you have like a session, like sometimes it's like flowing, it's beautiful, and something magical can happen. And it's hard, like when someone leaves and they pay you and it's like an hour and like it just, maybe you weren't in your like best form, maybe you're having a bad day or so, because you talk about being human.
Yes.
And then, or they're like just in a really hard place and just like, it's like heavy and like that, it can be hard, and there's a place that needs to go so that you can continue to do this work.
And you'll bring this up with clients?
No, I won't talk to my client. Yeah, because this is my, I have like a supervisor, talk about this stuff, like the work of doing the work, like what happened. It's like therapy about therapy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dicey area. And, you've heard of Mic Drop?
Yeah.
Mic Drop,
yeah.
You were involved with that. So one of the interesting criticisms that came our way, Rosh and I, when we were launching Mic Drop, which somehow found its way into the religious community, which really wasn't the model. It was actually a business to help people speak, and it was to go into business environments and help with team building. It was an actual business that was meant to make money. And up until COVID, it was like we did work for major companies, schools, businesses, some small, some larger. And the idea is it's a pretty neat team building and communication exercise for companies. Besides for the benefit that the teams get amongst themselves, really knowing each other. Like we did it at my office, and we had this from this woman who ran the finance department, who I knew her for 5 or 6 years, or I thought I knew.
Right.
And to find out that when she was a teenager, she was a model, and like that was like her career trajectory.
Wow.
And she one day was cooking in the kitchen, and a pot of chicken or a pot of something blew up, and she had burns over half her face. And I'd noticed that there were like some slight discoloration on her face. I didn't know what it was. But after that, she needed a new career. Obviously, her old career wasn't going to work with those injuries. And then she went into finance and became like a senior executive in finance. And that whole part of her story was not known to the company. And just how that changes the respect from the people working with her. So there's that aspect of it, the team building. And the other was aside from the team building, is you're also giving people a powerful skill to be able to express themselves, to be able to talk, to be able to deliver a message, convey a point, which is very powerful in business as well. Anyway, it made its way through the Jewish community. And at some point, a lot of the criticism that we received was, here you are talking about personal subjects and you're not a therapist. You guys aren't even qualified. And I just kind of laughed at it because I had been in therapy for 5 years and made some progress, but it didn't compare to, from a recovery and addiction perspective, after being in therapy for years, I was still an addict.
Yeah.
And credit to my therapist. My therapist was the one who pointed me in the direction of the 12 steps. I'm not knocking therapy.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that the healing that happened in a room full of addicts, not with a therapist. So to me, to say that only a therapist can help someone I kind of laughed at the idea, but I saw how prevalent it was.
Right.
And it was this criticism that was really sticking against us.
As if the therapists like the gateholders of knowing like what's okay and not okay, or it's again like almost like outsourcing your power to the therapist, like because they're saying you can't get into a room and have a conversation without like someone, like it needs to be held in a very specific way. So I was
speaking to someone recently, I think it was on the podcast, who referenced a teacher in a school who every time a certain kind of conversation came up that was a little bit dicey or emotional, or there was something going on at the home, she right away referred it to, like, okay, this is
outsource it out. It's like too scary for me.
Send to the school counselor. It's like, no, someone needs a human being with a set of ears.
Totally. That's why, by the way, like I do one-on-one work, but the group, like I also believe, like in the group and it's a tricky thing also, because I think something happens in an intimate setting in a one-on-one that can't happen in a group, but then something happens in a group that can't happen in the one-on-one. 100%. And then I have other like challenges that I was having trouble finding like a supervisor who could help me with this, because, for example, I run retreats, right? Now, who would I want to come to my retreats? Like the people I know, really, like some of the guys that I work with, of course I want to invite them to come to the retreat, right? Because like we have this deep relationship, there's care, there's love there, So in like maybe a more traditional clinical model, are you going to now invite your client to an overnight retreat and you're going to get in your bathing suit and jump in an ice bath and do it? It's like totally inappropriate, or, whatever. But so what, then you should exclude them from that possibility just because they're your client and there's this whole formal setting? There's something on the human side there that it doesn't make sense. I invite them. Yeah. And I'll talk about it with them. I'll talk about it with them before. I'll talk about how was it to be there with me, I'm like, well, maybe people watch this and think I'm like, I don't know, but maybe it's the wrong move. I mean, I discuss it with the supervisor I have is in a similar kind of, it's unique that he does retreats and sweat lodges and other things and has a clinical practice, which is unique. It's hard to find someone like that.
Right.
And I think it's important because the healing is not going to just happen in a 1 hour. It can't happen just that way. Not for everyone, definitely.
Right. In a retreat setting, you also, your humanity is shown much more as a therapist. I think it's good. I like it.
Yeah, I love it. And
Because
also,
it takes away that risk of, you can put someone on a pedestal who you see once a week.
Right.
But when you're hanging out like a
Yeah.
full few days in a retreat.
Exactly. You'll see that we're all human. But
Yeah.
and there's all the other beautiful things where healing is being around a fire, and healing is having a meal, and like not being in a rush, and all the other things that start to like bring that richness and like remind you what it's all about. And so yes, I believe in like bringing in all those elements, and again, like it's not that I've got this figured out. I have like a perfect policy. Like I'm just, I'm trying to.
Right. It definitely
work it.
feels, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but it feels aggressive to exclude the people who you're like are one-on-one with you, like those people you come closest to, from an aspect of healing that's so powerful. I didn't, even though I was in group therapy for years, like group therapy, I was in 12-step groups, not group therapy, but I'd seen the power of that. Something else unlocked since doing Adama, the work with Mayor over the last year and a half, that it's given me insight into the level of healing that can happen there as opposed to a lot of other settings. There's something very, very special. Because even though, I don't know how your retreats are led, but I got a sense yesterday from the circle is, yes, there's one person who's taking responsibility for the space, but we're all sitting in a circle.
Exactly.
Right? We're all here, we're all human, we're all sitting together. And in that space, maybe compared to 12 steps where that's happening as well, but we're connecting over something very, very specific. Like everything has to point back to that topic in one way or another, where these feel much broader.
Yeah.
And it's just, okay, like we're men trying to navigate life.
Yeah.
Whatever that means, and we're coming together. And yeah, for this activity or ceremony, I'm sitting in this seat, kind of taking responsibility for the space. But in the next one, I'm not. And even when I am, we're still in a circle.
100%.
I've seen deep, deep, deep power healing just happen there in ways that are not. And we saw it yesterday, for example. I can't tell you what led that guy who sang after you did. I can't tell you which part of the retreat led to him picking up a guitar and then afterwards doing medicine and then singing more and starting to write his own music and all of that stuff. But it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It's not like in a therapy session where it might like come up, hey, I used to do music, and then you talk about it specifically.
Yeah.
That conversation never happened. None of us knew. We did a retreat with him for 3 or 4 days.
Right.
None of us knew that's what he did, but I can see the straight line from spending 3 or 4 days with him and something starting to open up.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden he's,
he's ready to like bring his voice,
Yes.
Yeah. Now that point like really like hits home for me. And the kind of therapy I do anyway is more experiential, which is not like we don't want to like piece the past back together. We try and like drop in and feel what's alive and what needs presencing, witnessing. And then in some ways it's similar to medicine work. If you can get someone into that state of like, focusing inward, that there's a natural inner like healing intelligence that's like blocked. Let's say trauma is just all these places of freezing and blocking and protecting. And that thing that wants to come out is like spontaneous and organic and natural and like undirected. It's like the byproduct of like when you like start to move the things out of the way, like things like life starts to just get better. It's almost unexplainable. It's beautiful, so I'm just thinking of one of the guys I was been working with for the last year. I won't say any specific details, but we never talked about business really, like specifics of, and there was a lot with his whatever different things that he was dealing with, partners and untangling and the relationships and untangling, and all of a sudden, like just one day, like something was just new, and like he like opened a new business or something just happened, and it just like arrived, it emerged, and it's just so beautiful to see that because it's non-directed, and you create like the right conditions for that. And enough safety, and then it'll start to come through.
Miracles happen.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
Hey, bring us back. Let's continue the story.
The trajectory. Yeah.
So
we
you're
had
on the therapist path now.
I'm on the path. I'm doing the music. I've got this like wedding band with my friend that we started together. That was like a lot of fun and was a big part of my like identity, even persona in a way you could say, and known in the community. And we had a young family. We had 3 kids at the time. I have 4 children. So at the time with 3, this is going back maybe, let's say 10, 12 years ago. In Australia, young family, things are good, finishing university, got a little direction. And then one day, and we had a dream to move to Israel. That was like the original plan. My wife and I met in Israel. We love Israel. And that sort of just faded to like the background, that it wasn't even like a conscious thought. And then around the time I finished my studies and like things were looking pretty bright and open, we went away like one summer, and it was like Shabbos afternoon. I remember this very clearly. And we're sitting there and life is good. Like it's actually like objectively things were good, in a good place. And then this like wave of like sadness just like washed through. Like we were sitting there like Shabbos afternoon, like in this campsite place. And we both felt it. It was very apparent. And all of a sudden, like, what happened to Israel? Like there was this dream that we had, you know? And in a complete like irrational, maybe call it a spiritual moment, like, okay, so let's move to Israel, you know? And my wife's like, we have to move before the kids start school. And I was like, we need some money. She's like, how much? I said a number. I was just talking nonsense. Like, how long will it take you to like save that? I was like, 2 years. I don't know what I was talking about. We're just like boom, boom, boom. And we made this decision. In 2 years, we're making Aliyah. And that started like maybe like the next kind of phase of our life. And we did it 2 years later. This is 10 years ago. We moved to Israel for like this next kind of like epic adventure, and left everything behind, and didn't feel, at least consciously, wasn't running from anything, and like picked up and decided to go on this like big adventure. Yeah. And that opened a whole. So that was like a new perek, you know, a new chapter like in our life, you know, a whole new set of challenges and learning. And a big part of my time in Israel was like I wasn't able to really find my place, my work. Like my Hebrew wasn't great. Working here and working there and trying this and trying that, and, you know, wasn't really.
Or you couldn't slide back into the work you were doing there?
No, because there I worked in public mental health for a little bit in Australia, and then I worked in a high school, like as a kind of a school counselor and like in formal education. I didn't have the confidence to like be like in private practice, even though I had the qualifications. And there's also like the undercurrent of an understory. There were all these things that I hadn't met, you know, that were like buried like somewhere in the shadows that were waiting for me, you know. And now I understand I had to leave Melbourne and like get out of like, you know, I had all my family around and all this identity that I'd built up for myself. Mamish like that, like really, really like that. And just to be knocked around by life. Israel's tough, you know. There's the Israel you go to for like Sukkot break and stay in a hotel and like eat in restaurants. And then there's like Israel, like, you know. And we did things that were not like so smart. Like we decided we're going to go live on a moshav in the north because we thought it was like, you know, idyllic.
Romantic.
Yeah, like it's like such a bad idea, you know. It was like so miserable. So eventually we found our way to this beautiful community that we live in now. That's such a gift. And
where's that?
It's called Tocoa. It's in Gush Etzion, which is like maybe 30 minutes south of Jerusalem. And I'll just say one word about it because I think it's worth mentioning. It's a religious and secular community. So it's an intentional community. So you live in community. It's not just like a random city. But there's no like, it's intentionally religiously diverse. Like coming back to this idea of choice, that's the fundamental principle of the whole town. Like that's how it's constructed.
And it has secular.
Yeah, it's about 30% secular. And you even have couples where one is religious and the other one isn't. And there's room like adults to choose and to see where they're going, like in any direction. And community life happens in a shul, but it also happens in the public pool and in the library. And there's a whole arts center. And it's very liberating. There's no social pressure whatsoever to conform to any religious standard at all. Zero. Like there's no judgment. They're only like people wanting you to encourage you to be you, which is liberating. And of course it'd be very scary if you have been used to like having that to keep you kind of in check, you know, and in line. So that's like a really beautiful place to be, you know, and to be in community in that way is like very, very unique. So we managed to find our way there. That was like a good hashgacha practice. So being there for 9 years.
Neat.
Yeah.
Okay, so bring us further into that.
Further into the journey.
Yeah.
Okay. So look, I think like the real tipping point was I ended up actually going and working for Mayanot for a couple of years. Like I got after doing this and that, I'd done every job in Israel. I was just trying to also like really survive, and I also had like an attachment to the story. Like my self-worth is connected to my earning capacity, and like it's hard in Israel. So I like had a lot of like, you know, inner critic, like can't get it together, I can't make it here, blah blah blah. So I'll do anything. I'll work in a coffee shop. I'll work in high tech. I'll do this. I'll do that. You know. And eventually, like I had this opportunity to help Mayanot with their gap year program, which is a really nice role for me. Which is like, I was doing some counseling again. Like I'm kind of doing it, but not fully stepping into it. So I would see guys on the side, but I was like, you know. I was keeping it, but I was also keeping it safe, you know. I was like, not, you know, and still studying and blah blah blah. So I was there for a couple of years, and while that was happening, I had this idea of running a desert adventure company. So the Tocoa where I live is at the edge of the desert, and people would come and have an amazing time. I thought, wow, this could be really cool. Let's do something different. I'll run my own business. I had this whole plan. It's going to do tourism. So. Should we pause? Yeah. Okay. So I had this idea. I'll start this desert adventure company, and I had this whole plan, business, and so I kind of like left my nod, and I'm going to start this business, and just as I was kind of like getting it going, COVID happened, and obviously tourism and everything collapsed, and the whole world collapsed. So that was like one layer. And there was another thing kind of happen. It was all kind of happening simultaneously. I was starting to notice things that I couldn't ignore. So an example is coming back to my brother with Down syndrome. So I had ended up, he had come to Israel for a couple of years to be in a special needs yeshiva. And through the process, I had taken on a huge amount of responsibility for looking after him, even becoming his legal guardian. It was kind of for like... bureaucratic reasons, but I'd taken on a huge amount of like responsibility for him, almost like a parent. And I noticed I was starting to resent him, right? And then I was like, how can I be resentful over this guy? Like, how am I resenting my little brother, you know? And there were different, so that was one like kind of like clue, like I didn't know what it meant, but there were things happening that weren't making sense inside of me. So then I had the business going, and there were a few other things that I felt like things were starting to crumble. I didn't fully understand it, but something was happening. And then when COVID happened, and I see like, okay, like the airport's starting to shut down, the world's starting to shut down. So there's all of that, and how that's impacting everybody. And then me personally, I had like said, okay, finally, I'm going to have this business. And unconsciously, in my own mind, finally, I'm going to be worthy. You know, I'm finally going to be able to make a living and be my own man and whatever, you know, story I needed to tell about myself. And that was slipping away completely without my control. And then other things were slipping away. And I was getting very scared and lost and confused. And one little detail that I didn't mention was just before COVID, I made a trip out to Australia. I did a mushroom ceremony with some friends. And also there, I had some kind of...
That was your first time with?
That was my first time. I did mushrooms once, like just before I got married, but it was just not in any ceremonial way or any like meaningful, responsible way. It was like
this was a Tekes. This was a
Tekes. This was a Tekes, and it was like something like the field was being like plowed, you know, like something in my subconscious was being primed, ready for like something to take place. Again, this is now afterwards that I'm putting the pieces back together. But something happened there. Like the next day, I couldn't talk for like 3 days. Like, what just happened? You know, like like what? You know, had no kalim. You know. And then the COVID started, and then the business failed, and then...
Did you go in with a specific intention to that journey? Do you remember?
I didn't. No, I don't remember if we had a... It was a friendship gathering. It was safe. It were good people. I was very curious. It was just, but this is 2019, so it wasn't like the wave had just started accelerating, but it wasn't like out. There wasn't as much information. There was nowhere near.
It wasn't out there then.
Wasn't out there. I listened to one podcast that I found on the way to Australia, and it was fascinating.
Like Joe Rogan was talking about it, stuff like that.
Yeah, it was like little bits here and there.
In the Jewish community, I don't think it was.
It was not. Yeah, it was definitely nothing. Yeah. So I come back to Israel, and then the business, like, and it wasn't even about this business falling apart and the world shutting down. It was like something was shutting down inside here. You know, it was the way I was relating to everything. Things were starting to crumble. And then I got connected with a facilitator. So my mental health started declining like very rapidly, you know, and what that looked like was probably would be called depression. I was having trouble motivation. I was like just very lost and confused, and almost like what's the word, like kind of like frozen. Like I couldn't do anything. Like just could not get
just
it
like
together.
Apathetic.
It was like less than, not apathy, like low affect, just like, trying to think of the word.
Confused?
There was confusion. It was like I couldn't get anything together. Like I just couldn't, yeah.
Right. I think it's very useful to kind of slow down through this process because there are many people who've dabbled in psychedelics and then left.
Yeah.
Or are just starting it, or are concerned about someone else starting it and seeing the effects of it. So I think, you know, considering that it sounds like what you're going to say is not a linear path.
Right.
Right.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Right. I think it's worth
just like massaging it out of there.
Slowing down through this because
good.
It can often be glorified, glamorized in some way. This process when it's
definitely
it could be like very
it's kind of like to slow it down, the inner experiences, well, at least my inner experiences, I was not prepared to see what I had been avoiding seeing or looking at. And you know, it's like once you look, you can't put it back in the box.
You can't unsee.
And there's the seeing and the unseeing, and there's the capacity to be able to work with and be with and move through what you've seen and what it might mean. And as this person, you know, Moish Hendel, you know, or Moish Feiglin from Australia, who I had created over the course of, you know, 35 years, or however many years, to keep myself safe, to help myself in the world. And as that persona like started to crumble, there was nothing to hold it in its place, you know? And definitely then not the adequate support or the, you know, the community around, like even be able to support this process. And this is not just, I think it was amplified by, you know, psychedelics. If you think of psychedelic as like a psychic amplifier, like a, you know, an accelerator of a process. But this was something that needed to happen inside of me. Like something needed to like, you know, collapse so that something could like, you know, come through as something new. But it was accelerated, and there was the COVID context, and there was like this business, and there was all these other things that were just like all happening at the same time.
The winds of change.
The winds of change. It was like game on. And I'm like a kind of guy who's like, okay, like let's go. Like if the darkness is here, like I'm going in, you know, like let's just, okay.
Where was your wife with this?
So she was I want to think how much I want to share about her process, but she was there.
So, okay,
Yeah.
without going to her process, in terms of relating to you. So here you are
Yeah.
going through this
Yeah.
breakdown, maybe that wasn't,
Right.
I don't want to put words in my mouth, but
No.
in your mouth, but tell me if I'm capturing it right. So you go out to Australia. On the outside, things are okay, not completely functional. You come back unable to function.
Yeah. No, well, there's a space in between that. I came back from Australia like with my, let's say, prefrontal cortex, all tickled and like expanded from the mushrooms, thinking like that I'm okay. And I'm still riding this wave like, yeah, like something's opening and I've got this business and the future's looking great. And then the COVID came and something like put the brakes on everything for me. And that's when like this kind of facade starts, like the house of cards starts to crumble, like, in the middle of it. And so she was there, like, not, I don't think, I told her about the experience and it like blew her mind. Like this whole, like I went to Australia, I took these mushrooms. It was like, cause no one really knew about psychedelic. We didn't know about it really much, And then a few months later, I had been introduced to someone else who's a facilitator. So I thought I went to therapy and I wasn't really, like I was in a really bad place. I thought I heard about this MDMA therapy. So I'll go and I'll give that a crack, And my understanding of, I never taken, aside for smoking weed in high school, I never did any drugs. Like I wasn't like never used any drugs recreationally or anything like that. My understanding of MDMA is like, it's a good time, like something beautiful is going to happen. Like the cosmos is going to come and embrace me and I'm going to feel like, love and loved and it's going to be great, And I went into this journey and it was the exact opposite. It was like the gates of hell had opened up for me.
Oh,
Yeah. And like, I was complete. It took me, like there was whatever was happening. Again, got all these layers going on. It's like, what's happening? It's like, I can't believe this is happening. That's also happening. And like, how could this be happening? And that's happening too. And then it's like, but this is what's happening, It's like, what are you going to do? And just like, and what had uncovered there was this core wound that I had known the story about, like a specific incident that had happened in my childhood. But I didn't understand the full depth of what that had meant for like the person that I had become because of that wound. The story that had like deeply like embedded itself into my psyche.
How comfortable are you talking about that?
I won't say the specifics of the incident, but it was to do with like, being physically kind of punched up as a kid in a very specific kind of way that was particularly humiliating.
Physical abuse.
Physical abuse, yeah.
In a humiliating way.
Yeah. And I think it's the second part that was the more significant.
The humiliation, yeah. Yeah, there's a reason we say that humiliating someone in public is akin to killing them.
Yeah. Yeah, I even noticed, even as I like said, okay, I'll share that. Like I can feel like, there's like a strong reaction inside me right now, about that. Yeah. I'll just let that be here for a moment. Yeah. So I had to meet that. And I had to meet that in a way that wasn't a story. It was like fully an experience embodied. And like, it was like, it something had to come through. And I spent most of the night like, screaming and crying and in agony and shaking. And then...
Slow down here for a second, because we say it in healing, for example, you got to heal it to feel it, right? Or you got to feel it to heal it.
You got to feel it to heal it.
Got to feel it to heal it. And do you know why? I wonder why. Like, why do we have to?
Why do we have to feel it to heal it?
Yeah, because I think that it's one of the parts that it could be like misunderstood from the outside about healing. Oh, these guys are going to heal. Like it's this fun thing. No, think about that event in childhood that you really, really, like you've spent 20 years avoiding.
Yeah.
30 years avoiding.
Yeah, 35.
I don't want to feel that thing.
Yeah, I can't feel that thing. It's not safe. Yes. It's like, I'll I actually built a whole identity around not feeling that thing. Whoever I think I am is about not feeling that.
Feeling that thing.
Yeah.
And then the healing process is to
meet that.
Fully kind of like revisit ourselves at that age and say, okay, whatever I decided to not feel then, I'm going to feel.
I'm going in.
feel now.
I'm going to meet that now. Yeah.
So do you have an understanding of why do we need to do that? Why is it so
Yeah.
essential as part of the healing process?
Yeah. So then we need to define what is a healing. What is healing? You know.
Let's do it.
So I have you heard of Thomas Hübel?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm a big chassid. I'm a big fan. And he talks about healing as like including all the things that we've excluded. Is healing, like becoming whole. So for whatever reason, like let's say you look at trauma as our most intelligent response at a given time based on the circumstances. Either I'm like unsupported or overwhelmed, so I'll either leave my body or so then that thing is waiting. It's frozen somewhere in my body, in my memory, because I couldn't feel it at the time. As if I did, it'd be too scary, too overwhelming. I would, so that's waiting somewhere inside us. And healing is saying, I'm ready, I'm able to include that again. I'm not getting rid of it. I'm actually like allowing it to be here. Or there's more of me, or there's a larger version of self, or more expansive, or mature adult, or whatever different words you want to use, that can now like make room for this thing and let it be here. So I no longer have to use all this. That freezing takes energy, to run a freezer.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, and then I'm keeping myself blocked. I'm keeping like huge amounts of my wisdom or my intelligence or my resources are like, I'm using it all like I'm running a defensive like system to like keep myself safe.
There's kind of two parts that you're saying. Is one is there's this thing that I'm blocking, right? So what else is being blocked?
Mm-hmm.
And the other is that I'm using energy to do the blocking.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a huge amount of resources that's like going to just like
managing this.
Yeah, managing. I like managing like something that's
I used to have
sure.
To have constant problems with fatigue always.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was low energy. I couldn't understand someone,
mm-hmm.
and I always felt like I was crashing, like constantly,
mm-hmm.
constantly crashing. And I did things. I built businesses. I did stuff, but I would look at people with energy. I'm like, how do they travel so much? How do they do these things? And it wasn't until years later that I realized how much of my mental and emotional energy was being used just to manage and deal with my anxiety.
Exactly. Yeah. So you've got all your batteries running to like, and you don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah. Don't even know that they are doing.
Yeah.
If someone asked me if I was anxious, I would have said no.
Wow. Yeah.
We have to live outside of that for a few minutes and say, it's kind of what you spoke. I wasn't at your whole evening yesterday at the House of More, but you said like hit Control S on this. Like you get to save this. And then someone shared with me afterwards, they had sat down next to me after the circle and they said that, they had just done some intense medicine and their biggest fear is going back out there and losing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go into the whole song and dance of my perspective there, but you are going to lose it. Like, of course you're going to lose it.
Right.
But what you won't lose is knowing that like this exists.
Yes.
And that's what happened to me is I had certain experiences where I was at peace.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't because my outside world changed. Like the things that I was anxious about still existed.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my goodness. Like life doesn't have to feel like I'm carrying a heavy backpack full of rocks.
Yeah.
Backpack full of rocks.
Right.
And I didn't know I was.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have registered if in other words, like I had to experience the positive and then that delta lived inside me and saying, if I can feel like that, then why do I feel like this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that energy that we're using to suppress. So it's both. And then what are we suppressing is all these positive feelings that are
like also like that open heart, like because like people want to know, am I gonna like get healed and then I'll never feel sad again? Like what? No. Like grief, of course. If someone died that you cared about, wouldn't you want to cry?
Right.
Like wouldn't you want to like sob like the deepest tears at, like if you lost someone that you loved? That is also the gift of healing, that you can cry, that you can feel sad, like that you have access again to your emotions, to your humanity, So I think that's like coming back to your question, like, yes, like you need to, like, that's what we want to do. We want to create the possibility, the conditions, the safety. Medicine has like a way of allowing that or like pushing that through because it like melts away a lot of the protectors, especially MDMA is really good at that. That's like its main function. But you might not, I definitely wasn't ready to see what was behind that. And the medicine doesn't really ask you, if you're ready or if you care. This is what's happening right now, So what came from what came from there was also like I had to learn of a lot of painful protectors that I had built, such as my relationship with my brother that I mentioned before, that I had used my like almost like love and care and like wanting to look after him as a way to kind of get love and approval from my parents. This is all covert. I had no idea, that this was happening. That I would fly to Australia to play weddings from Israel. And in Australia, I come back and I get on the stage, I have my clothes and I have my band. I'll be Mr. Moish, on the stage. And everyone's like, yeah, and how's it in Israel? Yeah, it's amazing, And ad kadei kach, so much so my subconscious would like get me to fly all the way to the other side of the world just to get on a stage, just so I could get reinforced to feel okay about myself, That's how strong these protectors can work, like to help you feel okay. And I was seeing all these patterns and all these things in my life that I'd used all these ways to have like a sense of self. And all those things were basically core parts of this identity that I'd built. So who am I if I don't play music anymore in this way?
Right.
Who am I but I'm like the legal guardian of my brother now? Do you see what kind of mess like that I was like getting myself in, And it's like, so it was like a really, it was a very painful and difficult night and experience, and just the beginning of like a big, unfolding. It wasn't like one night healed, People talk about 20 years of therapy in one night, but, there's a lot more that needs to happen for some people.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely for the uninitiated. And and what was also like crazy was I thought like I had a really good understanding of myself. Like I thought like I knew myself,
Yeah, that's risky.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, I know. I'm self-aware. No, you have no idea,
Right.
So yeah.
I once did maybe tell me if this resonates with
Sure.
the way what you're saying there. So I once did medicine with a therapist. It was just maybe 3 of us in the group. It was a small medicine ceremony, and could have been 2 or 3. In any case, we had some time to interact, before, during, and after. And at some point, I remember him turning to me and say, like, I don't have any problems, do I? Like, I don't have any. He went there because a family member kind of pushed him and said, like, you must. Like, okay, I'm going to.
Okay.
I don't think it was his wife who pushed him, but another family member who pushed, and he connected it to his marriage in some way. Like, I need to in order to make people happy, but not for myself. And at some point, he turned to me and he's like, I'm a therapist. Like, I have to be okay. Like, I can't.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't not be okay.
Yeah.
And I turned to him. Sometimes I can get a little spicy on medicine. I said, you're the most effed up person I ever met. So, and I said, do you know why? He said, no. I said, you actually have the biggest problem I've ever seen anyone have in my life. And he's like, really? Like, he was suddenly intrigued. I said, but not for now, right? And I lied back down. And like, I don't think you're ready to hear it. Whatever. I was just, in this medicine space. I think it was definitely a heart opener. Like, it was definitely something that made me more talkative, not like an ayahuasca or mushrooms, And we're going back and forth. And at some point I said, you know what your problem is? That you think you're not supposed to have problems, And I like something went off for him. But when I realized what he was dancing with, I was like, only a therapist can conclude this.
Right.
Only someone, and what I mean by that, not only a therapist, can happen to others in that capacity. Like, only someone who's created an identity around
being okay.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Being okay, because like suddenly he was stuck in this loop.
Yeah.
That someone else wouldn't have been, but that's
right.
So identities.
So I can't not be okay because who am I if I'm not okay?
Exactly.
So then it's like boom,
My whole identity is to be okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
So that's what you're talking about.
Well, I don't know if my whole identity was to be okay, but I thought that I was kind of okay. It wasn't necessarily connected to the therapist's identity, but
right. You were talking about self-awareness.
Self-awareness, like it's like how could it? It's still today like is even with like the intellectual understanding, and I explain you a little bit about healing and how I understand it. It still blows my mind that you can even have maybe access to a story. Like there was no revelation. Sometimes in medicine, people can have a revelation of let's say, a suppressed memory that they didn't know about. you could know about something that happened in your life, but you never had a chance to really, let's say, feel that thing fully. So that was also quite, that was so powerful. Like, okay, there's this story, but I never knew, like, I never connected all the dots of like where this story embedded itself inside my psyche, like how it like created like my whole life.
Wow.
Like these places were kind of like where I was kind of born in a way, you know, like my whole life trajectory. And
I think there's some who use the term kind of like vows for those moments. Like a vow, I vow never to feel that way again in my whole life.
wow. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of lands somewhere. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I heard Rabbi YY talk about why on Kol Nidre, like that is the prayer. Like all my vows are not vows, all my oaths are not oaths. It's not talking about
That's beautiful.
It's not talking about the money, or the thing we borrowed from someone that we forgot to return.
Right.
It's all of these identities that we've created. I remember in addiction recovery, when I started, like one of the things that led to it, I was already in therapy. One of the things that led to it was a conversation with one of these, I don't even know how to describe it, Makobal energy, whatever, someone who just can see and understand things. And when I spoke to them for the first time, said, you kind of really need to do some healing. And I said, like, I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy for years. I was dealing with the child sex, the fact that I was abused as a child. And they said, you need kind of deeper. Whatever you're doing, you need much deeper. And at that point in time, my therapist was recommending sex addiction recovery for me. So like the two kind of connected. But I said, why? I said, you made a promise at 17 that was very, very important. And you have to see what that was. Like you have to free yourself from that promise.
Wow.
So I didn't know what it was at the time, and they didn't have any insight either. It was like kind of the end of that. I made a promise at 17. But that sat with me. And as I started going through healing and really addiction recovery, as I started doing some of that work, things started piecing together. And at one point I was reading, there's an author, his name is Patrick Carnes, more than an author. He's kind of the father of sex addiction. He's the first guy who held his flag and said sex can be an addiction. And he wrote a lot of the books on recovery. A book, Out of the Shadows, became very famous. He wrote a book called The Gentle Path, which is a 12-step process. And I was working through a lot of his workbooks and ideas. And in it, he said that, every addict believes, like a foundational belief of an addict is I can't depend on others to have my needs met. And part of the healing process is to once again regain our capacity to trust others. And that generally, by and large, if we go through life depending on others and forming good relationships, we could depend on others to have our needs met. And something clicked for me at that time that there was an incident with one of my parents where I didn't like the way I was being treated. I got, like, rage is not the word. There has to be a word above rage.
Okay, yeah.
Violent rage, maybe. And I mean, what I did with the rage is I just ran. Like I left the house and just ran. I sprinted as fast as I could down the street. And during that process, I made a promise to myself, I will never rely on anyone for anything again in my whole life.
Wow.
And my healing couldn't commence until, and it happened when I pieced it together. That happened. I was in yeshiva at that time, the year 17, turning 18. So it totally makes sense as that incident. It was a very powerful moment for me. And to say, I'm never going to rely on anyone again for whole life. If I wasn't willing to work through that vow and that promise, I was never going to get sober. Because I still was going to depend on pornography and sex more than
humans.
Yeah, more than anything else.
Wow.
So I think those vows are.
Yeah.
That's what I was feeling when you were talking about.
Yeah, it's like a sacred oath in a way,
Yeah.
right? It's like I promise this kid, that little boy. Yeah. It's interesting you say that because it's come up so many times. Like I had this experience where after, and I'm jumping ahead, but I think it just relates to this point. Maybe let's say a year or two after I had sort of gone through this process of kind of like dissolving and, finding out who I was again or for the first time. And I remember I went to an ayahuasca ceremony and took the first cup and I lay down And then I get a preview, like I get a trailer for the night. Like it's like people understand this, will understand this. It says like, this is what we're doing tonight. And it's about this little boy and the whole story and I'm just like, I'm like, it can't be that we're going back here again. It's like, how many hours and hours of therapy and it's like, how could it be about this little guy again? Like I can't do it again. I can't go there again, And it's like, that's where we're going. And it's always going to be about this little guy and, kind of like let go. And there was a very beautiful thing that happened that night was at one point I was cold and I needed someone to put a blanket on me, and I'm looking around and there's like no one available, let's just say. So I'm like, I need someone to look after me. And then I felt myself, and then I remembered I had my big sweater like in another room somewhere, and I kind of like left whoever was sitting in the room, which was me, I left him there. I went and got the sweater and I put it around me sitting there, and I had this feeling like, okay, like I can look after like something very, these words don't do it any justice, but something deeply transformative happened in that, experience. And this interesting thing that I've experienced with this particular wound, which is really like meeting this like sensitive inner child who at that moment, the opposite of his needs were met, let's say. It's been about like really creating like a deep relationship with that little guy, and it comes up all the time. Like whenever there's a trigger or something, if I can like be present and be honest, like tuk, 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 go down the layers, I'm coming back to that place. It seems
what
like
age?
7, I think. 7. Yes, yeah. It's like that. It's almost like a defining wound that like now that I feel like I'm on another side of this whole story, that there's like it's like it was so necessary and I'm so grateful for it. And it could sound very strange, even as I say the words out loud, but it feels true and resonant. It's something about this like keeps reverberating in the present and allows me to be who I am today and do what I do and be with the people. It's just...
Right. Not in a way that's thrown off course, but thrown on course.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Thrown on course. Like it's like a part of a story that needed to happen. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad we really slowed down through the details of the process, because it's like, oftentimes, I've taken not a strong stance. I don't have like a strong stance on medicine. I did my stance on medicine, but I become a vocal messenger of medicine. And my stance is just that it should be considered the way we consider anything else. Like that's all.
Yeah, I've heard you say that.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not saying everyone should do it. I'm not saying everyone shouldn't do it. But if you're going out there and you're looking at therapy, you're looking at the 12 steps, you're looking at the many different kinds of therapy, then consider psychedelics. We don't have to throw it into some, Avodah Zarah or illegal, or certainly there are stuff that are illegal. What I'm saying is we don't have to throw into a closet of it's necessarily bad.
Right.
Because of that. And we can figure out ways. We can travel to different countries. There are religious ceremonies. There are medicines which are legal. There are many different ways to figure it out, and not just to say, okay, because of these things therefore we shouldn't consider it a option. It's like, no, some people have had profound healing. At the same point in time, some of the criticism that I see is like, oh, it's a shortcut. It's an easy way out. I'm like, I don't know that someone who does that would use that experience. How can you call something a shortcut? Yeah. Which could literally slow down time. I had an experience once where someone asked me to be there for them in an ayahuasca ceremony. And I said, okay, I'm going in support of them. They're going through a process. They feel like I can be helpful. I'm going. So I took a small amount, kind of like the minimum acceptable dose,
Yeah, the helper dose.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I'll take a little bit. And then once comes in and starts working, and it says, you're already here, maybe take a little more. Okay, so I took
another sip.
Yeah. Another sip. And all of a sudden, boom. I was, like glued to the floor, and it's like some deep stuff started coming on. And then in my head, I start doing this thing of like, okay, I didn't take that much. I still only took 2 doses. Like, this is not going to stay too long, right? Like, how long does it last? These things last, like, and I start calculating, takes this long to hit and 2 hours afterwards. And I start playing this mental game of like trying to resist where the medicine is pulling me.
Right.
And say like, I can outlast you.
You're still trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't take too much. Like, I didn't sign up for this. My intention was to help this other person, and it kind of, the journey continued such that everything was closed. Everyone had left. The only person, like the shaman had closed it for everyone else. And I was still sitting there arguing with the medicine that you can't actually last this long in my body.
Yeah.
And this went on for the longest time. Then I started playing tricks and saying like, maybe I could. Like, okay, I accept it. It's lasting longer. It's like, no, you didn't. Then you're still trying to fight it. And it took hours. I don't know how many hours. It was like 3 hours after everyone left the ceremony. I'm still lying on the floor. And I was like, Eli, even if you start playing this like mental game, you understand that we can make time feel much longer here.
Wow.
Just give up. Just give up.
Just let go.
I don't even remember what the overall message was. Maybe the message was just give up.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the message. And then for someone to describe that experience, like having lived through this, I don't know, it was like a hell that I was in for hours, but it felt like an eternity. And for someone to describe that as a shortcut, it's like, I don't know that we're talking about the same.
It's a different vocabulary.
Right. Yeah, we're talking about the same thing. Like that description doesn't match
what
I've experienced, what I've seen others experience.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't match my experience.
Right. And I think, and then the other side of it is that for someone coming into it is what to expect. I don't know what your thoughts on it, but I asked you in your first intention, you said was curiosity.
Yeah.
If someone told you today they were doing medicine out of curiosity, what would you say to them?
I'd probably say, you sure you want to do this? Also, it depends what the medicine is. No, some people say to me, I'm thinking about doing ayahuasca, but I'm scared. I'm like, you should be. You should be scared. You know? And I would also really I don't work with medicine directly, but I work on both sides of it. So I work and help people prepare and integrate. I'm really passionate about integration. Definitely as a result of like a lot of my own experience and feeling like didn't have the tools or the support to really, because an opening can happen and then your life can start to crumble. Like there are many things that I didn't mention, but even in that session, my whole relationship with religion, like it was fundamentally changed in one night. Like it also had this need for approval and avoid shame and whatever was like, it weaseled its way into every good thing in my life, including my relationship with God and religion. So I had this experience like, I'm basically doing Torah mitzvahs to kind of just relieve shame all the time, and just to feel okay, and experience that in such a visceral way that I had to say, okay, I can't have anything to do with this now. Like, that's it. I'm cutting my beard off. I'm not putting on film. Like, I'm done. I'm taking a break, like I need to figure out what is happening. That is a very unstabilizing thing, especially if you're a father, you have a wife, you have kids. Like, what are you doing? But I'm the kind of person, like, that's what needed to happen. Maybe some people could put it back in the box, but I knew I had to follow this all the way. And it was difficult for the people around me, and they couldn't understand what was going on. And, I'm sure it was confusing for my children, and, it was challenging at home. Like, what? So what do you mean? No, I'm not from anymore. Like, I didn't even know what it meant. I just knew whatever was happening until now,
it had to change.
It had to change. And the only way I can really know, I had to play a game. I said, the only way I can know if God truly loves me completely is if I don't do anything that I think that he needs me to do. And still trying to feel his love in that way. And that was something that I needed to do. It had to happen. It's so, so that's a destabilizing thing to do when you're 38 years old and when you have children and a family and it's a pandemic and, you don't have a job and it was a big balagan, so, but something had to happen that I had to just let just It's like the dominoes, like one thing got flicked, and
Yeah.
like just I had to just kind of like follow whatever was happening next.
Yeah. I mean, the search for truth has to be like, we have to let go of a lot of biases and fears to truly
Yeah.
know, like, what's the truth? A lot of us
Yeah.
say we want the truth, but do we really want to know
Right.
the truth? I don't. Like, in many areas of life, we don't. And it takes certain,
Mm-hmm.
do we want to know, I had
Yeah.
this one guy at work who I had like concerns about him. I was working with him. I had
Okay.
concerns. And I'm like, I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to ask the people he worked with. I didn't want to get like real reports.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed this at one point. Like, I'm resisting something here. Like,
Mm.
what am I going to find out?
Mm-hmm.
I want to find the truth. Why? Because like I really fought for him against others. Like I really took a stand. I didn't want to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
Or the amount of responsibilities that I think he's carrying, and if he's not, then what do I have to deal with? Right? There's so many things, and eventually, like when I finally opened that door and saw things I didn't like, I was like, oh goodness.
Yeah.
That desire to not want to know the truth made the truth much worse.
Yeah. There you go.
I had like a period of
And it's like a big warning sign in a way, right? When you don't want to know the truth, it's
Yes.
probably because there's something that you don't want to see, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the same like with religion. Like I had that question for a while of like, okay, so I'm standing on something as like this is a truth,
Yeah.
but if I was born somewhere else
Mm.
to a different group of people inside, like I can, like, do I really believe that if I was born in Gaza, I wouldn't be pushing like these ideas very
Right.
strongly? Do I really believe if I wasn't born in Williamsburg, I wouldn't be anti-Chabad?
Right.
Right? Like what am I really holding on to? How is this me?
Right.
And to really go search, like, what are the chances that I was born in just the right religion, just the right community, just that, like, everything is,
Yeah. Like Meduya.
everything is
precise.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, there's no lies here.
Yeah.
They're all somewhere else. They're all
Right,
like on the
right.
other side of the street. What are the chances? And to really go into that and say, okay, so
Yeah.
what is this thing?
Yeah.
This thing.
In some ways,
It's
I feel like
scary.
I didn't really have a choice. Like it was kind of like I think I've said this expression a few times. Like this is what's happening right now. Like I've really,
Yeah.
like this is what like this is what's happening right now. And
But you didn't have a choice because you made the choice to take some things that made you see some things.
right, but I
Right.
think yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's definitely part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
some people do fight it. I find some people who I had one friend who took a heaping dose of mushrooms, and
Mhm.
he entered the space, which I've been to way too many times to count, which is
Mhm.
that this is like all a virtual reality.
Wow.
It's all simulation. It's a very, very scary place
Mm-hmm.
to go to, that I've created everything in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And he went there and was sharing how scary it was. And, I told him I lived in that place for a year, which is a very, very scary place,
Mhm.
continuing to return there off medicine, on medicine, in conversations
Wow.
that, like, my whole reality is constructed in my mind. Nothing really exists.
Wow. Okay.
it's
That is very scary.
very,
yeah.
very, very
yeah.
scary place to be. And then it's like, if I think something, I can make it happen, right? Like
Mhm.
if my mind could create something, I can create, I can create 10 terrorists barging in through the door at this moment. Like I can create anything in my
Mhm.
mind. So what am I thinking about? What's not? What am I creating? Like, you can go so many different directions. This thought,
Mhm.
it's very scary. So I shared with him the way I kind of integrated this, for lack of a better word, is number one, like the brain is created,
Mhm.
right? It's not the thing.
Mhm.
So we wouldn't try to process a chocolate cake through our brain. We
Mhm.
shouldn't try to process this life through our brain. Our brain just can't fit the
Right.
totality of the human experience
Yeah.
in it. So some of it just like is not going to make sense. And the other is that, how cool that we get to hold life with like a little bit of a gentler touch.
Mhm.
It's true, but it might not be,
Uh-huh.
right? Like it just,
It took a positive spin a little bit on
yeah,
it.
it's nice. We don't know for sure.
Right. I don't
So
need to be obsessed with the
Exactly.
truth of the truing, like ultimate, holding on to it. Yeah.
Like, am I really going to get that angry at someone? If it's
Mm.
not like, if there's a part of me that's like,
Interesting.
am I really going, like, how worked up in fear and anger and misery and everything else? So if it's not completely true, then shouldn't it be cooler if I'm doing things I want to do? Like,
Yeah.
there are ways to soften around that message. And I saw for him is like bolted from that completely. And I see sometimes that some people like do
Yeah.
successfully put a
Put it
lock
back
on the
in,
door
yeah.
afterwards. It's like it never happened. But I know what you're saying as well,
Yeah.
which is I couldn't unsee what I saw.
Yeah.
I felt the same way. Sorry, I couldn't unsee what I.
Yeah. And I wouldn't want to. Now I'm saying, you know, now that it was difficult, it's very difficult time, very unstabilizing, very painful, and gave an opportunity, like, and I feel like it was a kind of like an initiation, that period of time in my life when, like, you know, like, yeah, when I would go and just the world was quieter as well, as there wasn't that much going on.
Right, COVID was such an interesting time.
Interesting time. I'll go out in the morning. I'll go out and get a little daven, like pray, but I wouldn't bring my tefillin with me, you know? Like, I'm going, watch the sunrise and like talk to God. It was like the first time I ever did it. I never did it. I didn't know what was a thing. And I had these spiritual experiences and yeah, and have slowly been able to choose to bring certain things back, that and to re-include, because I think I took it very extreme. I said, okay, like, I'm not playing music anymore. I'm not doing this. I don't know. It was like, it was very, very extreme, you know? So, but that was an important part of it, of saying, no, like, I don't know who I am. I don't know anything. I'm stopping everything, you know?
Yes, that's why I was asking the question earlier, is what did your wife do with that? Not what did she do with her own joy? What did she do with that?
It was a big source of tension. It was not, like, what do you mean? What do you... I just came home one day without a beard. I had a beard down to here, like 18 years, Lubavitcher beard, you know? Just boom, gone, you know? I couldn't have it anymore. It became like an Egel Hazar for me. Because, like, it represented something. Like, it was like I'm not even allowed to make decisions about my own face. That's how I felt. Like, I have this, you know, tree on my face that, like, I'm only... Why do I have it? Because I can't not have it. Like your friend, the therapist, like...
Right, I have to be okay.
I have to be okay. So I had to go.
When you say Egel Hazav, you're being figurative, literal?
You know, like, there's this beautiful, like, I can't remember who says it, but I heard this, like, kind of... It's more like it's around that time. I'm trying to remember the metaphor. It's less Egel Hazar, more the Har Sinai. There's this idea that the Har Sinai was Niftecha Har Kagigis, like the mountain, like Hashem, like, lifted the mountain, said, either you accept the whole Torah or I'm going to bury you here. And one of the Hasidic masters says that there are times in our life where, like, the very things that we hold sacred, they become the things that are going to bury us. Like, so I felt that at a certain point in my life, like, this beard was like the most beautiful, like, going back to my Mayonot days when I decided to grow it and, like, getting into the identity, and it was like the most beautiful and perfect thing for me. And that very thing has now come to destroy me, kind of. So I had to offer it up. It was more symbolic than anything else.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So coming back to your question also about at home. So it was challenging. I mean, I think in Israel, like, I wasn't such a shagitz, you know, like, you know, you're not like, I'm not like a big baltaiva, like, what was I going to do already? You know, the religious stuff was more like internally, like, how am I relating to all this Judaism and what and trying to figure out, like, what do I actually really want about all this, and what's my relationship with God, and wanting to have a relationship with God that's about love and pure acceptance.
Right.
Yeah.
For some reason, I have this image in my head. You know, when they have these like a beauty store, so they'll have a woman with like a towel over her head, like the cream all over her face, and the cucumbers in the eyes, and like, okay, I thought you came here to look better. I know what the hell is this?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Right.
Didn't you do 20 years of therapy last night? Yeah, like,
right.
what?
So the medicine work feels the same. Like, I thought you came here to feel better.
It's like, wait, what? Can't we just, like, go back to, like, the Matrix? You know, like, no, you can't.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. Yeah.
I think it's good that I often tell people with, like, curiosity, like, careful. Like, if that's why you're going,
easy does it.
Easy does it. And going on the recommendation of others.
Yeah.
Careful. They can want to strangle. You can want to strangle that person.
Yeah. No, I definitely do not, you know, recommend, push, you know, but I support people as much as I can. feel like my experience has given me a unique like opportunity to support people through what can be like a messy or like an untanglement, because it's a lot more than just, you can look at integration as like what happened in the journey or what needs to start happening in your life because of maybe what you've seen or what you're, what's starting to shift and move. And that's like a longer process that is not just about integrating that specific journey. It's like, how is this like starting to inform your life or your direction?
Yeah. Religion to me, it's interesting, but it seems like it almost always bumps up against stuff in the medicine space. It's like, because there's so much room for, it's like the ego forms around that almost more than anything.
For our stuff to get in mixed up.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Like all of our defenses, like, no, it's right. Like, no, what? It's all fears.
It's all fears.
It's like literally all fears. And we're using all this language. And then we have like, that hammer that can smash everything.
Yeah.
It's like it says God on it, and I just get to smash. My youngest son, I named him Abraham, and I felt very connected to this name. It's really through recovery. I was already arriving at this stuff because in recovery I already smashed a lot of these ideas. Like with tefillin also, like I just realized like I put it on because I feel guilty if I don't. Like, why am I putting like the whole thing? It's like this guilt box.
Yeah.
That I'm strapping to my arm and my head every
You can relieve your guilt for a few, right? You
right, exactly.
You feel
if I don't do it, I feel guilty. If I do, I don't feel. It's like, that's my relationship. I don't want any part of this.
Right.
And then obviously in recovery, it's made very clear. It's kind of laid bare. If you have an addiction, you have a problem in your relationship with God. Mm-hmm. Even though I wasn't religious at the time, but there were certain ideas that I held strongly to.
Yeah.
And just to see that point blank, I don't care how long your beard is. I don't care what titles you have. How many people respect you? If you have a trouble with addiction, you're addicted to something, then your spiritual relationship with God is off. And the way to repair that is, and that was kind of laid bare for me. There was no, if your relationship is good, you don't have an addiction. Like if your relationship there is good, you don't have an addiction. There's no, and if you do, and it's like, it's a binary in some way. That's kind of the way it was laid bare for me. And I remember connecting to this individual in society who we can look up to today, who didn't have anyone to turn to. He's like, what does the rabbi say? What's the halacha? What does my guru say? Zero. He had nothing. He just, what does my heart say? How am I going to get closer to this
inner knowing and truth, this compass? Yeah, there's a kind of a thread here because, you come back to like outsourcing to my therapist. I can also outsource like my responsibility to be true to that voice by saying, well, I'm spiritual or I'm connected to God because I follow the rules. You can be following the rules. You have no connection, and to like, someone who believes in God doesn't do certain things, or doesn't do things in the name of God. It's just like it can be a godless action, but it gets put inside a story or it ticks a box.
Right.
That's not believing. That's not God.
Right. Then I started thinking about things was like, you have certain cultures, right? From cultures, which growing a beard is like, you're kind of challenging the rabbi if you grow a beard.
Right.
Who are you to grow a beard? You're not the big Rav. What you think is big ego, you can grow a big beard. So it's seen as the epitome of ego. And then in another, right, in Chabad, it's considered totally terrible. It's like, how is this possible?
Right, exactly.
Like, how is it?
Yeah, it's culture. That's what it is, essentially.
What?
It's culture. It's culture.
It's
okay, and it's okay that there's culture, and like, I can even appreciate a lot of the culture, but like, let's just call it what it is.
Yes,
it's culture,
yes. And for that to be deconstructed is really beautiful. I have this. I'm going to read it if you don't mind, but it's, I have a poem I wrote like early recovery. Pull it up. So I wrote this about, I guess, kind of this search, right? This search of, it's like this God, it's there. Because in recovery was such an interesting thing for me. It was like so strange. Because I'd grown up religious. I'm seeing these things not working. I'm slowly stripping them away from my life. And then things aren't working. And you walk into a room And what was very unique for me about the meetings was, one, the refreshing honesty, but two, just like tons of laughter. People were enjoying life.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, how cool. Like this is nice. And then I'm hearing people's stories of their addictions, that they're doing better today. They feel more sense of purpose and peace and meaning. And I was like, hey, I really want some of what they have. And then they don't stop talking about God, which was so freaking triggering.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I cannot tell you the extent to which this word triggered, that at some point I just said, you know what? Like, I'm not, it says 12 steps. It's a one step at a time. And in the first step, there is no God.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not looking at the
Right.
next steps. The first step just talks, I admitted I was powerless over my addiction. My life had become unmanageable. Like, I'm good with that.
Right. You can get behind it. Yeah.
Yeah. God mentions in the third step, a higher power, second step. They already told me the higher power is the group. Okay. Like, I don't have to deal with this right now. But at the same point in time, as I'm going further along, it becomes very clear that, like, everyone is praying, everyone is meditating, everyone who's sober. So I'm like, I need to wrestle with this. I need to wrestle with this God word, this God thing, this. Anyways, I wrote this. I'll share it with you, but I think it captures my unbelievable that I lost it as we. Okay, here goes.
Let's go.
Who is this force? What is this being? Some call him creator. Some say he's all-seeing. How is he popular? Where was he found? Can he truly release me from the chains with which I am bound? So many opinions, endless variations, which one to follow? My own feels so hollow. I begrudge the judge, and I shun the master. I am not your slave. I am not your prisoner. I don't deserve punishment, and I don't care for atonement. All that belongs to the sinner. Me, I'm a seasoned beginner. Like that, like seasoned beginner, like that was like the Avraham, like that I was, like that word. So I abort the God I knew. I like putting the word abort in there. Like I abort the God I knew and leave behind the beliefs I had. My mind is open to a new power, higher, 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 higher. And I think this is like that search. It started before medicine, but it deepened a lot with medicine. Like, what are all these things that we call God, we call religion? It's like that get all mixed up and has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
When you said earlier about, like, you're telling someone to pray. Like, can we think about that for a second?
It's insane.
It's insane.
It's insane.
It's insane. We've lost something.
Right. But I do want to say something about this, because it's kind of where I am now, where I'm like leaning in towards, like, I had, talking about medicine experiences, but I had this experience the first time I drank ayahuasca that I kind of, I was kind of like stuck in this like misery place, like deep in the suffering and the pain and the woundedness and the victim. Like I was in like a dark place. And in classic like ayahuasca, way, it was like, oh, you like pain, you like suffering, so go and sit in it, And I like just like for like 2 hours, just like in the deep darkness of my own creation, And at a certain point, I get this like vision of my tefillin, and I had shoved them somewhere, like with I had shoved them in like a cupboard where we keep like spare bags or something. I'd put them there, and I had this kind of feeling then of like, this is something special. Like, this is something that your father wore, and his father's father, and his father's father, and it was like this like magical, like almost like treasure.
Yeah.
And you shove them in this cupboard, and it wasn't like, shaming me or guilt tripping me or anything. It was like, how can you expect to appreciate a treasure if it's like shoved there with all this stuff that you don't want to look at? And kind of cracked me out of a possibility that I have to completely exclude everything. Like, I was saying that like I had to push everything away. It was like, gave me this, because I couldn't step into a shul. I couldn't do anything. Like, I was just like, just get me away from this stuff, I don't want to be around any of it. And it opened up, like almost like opened up a valve that said like, there's something beautiful here for you. You can have a new relationship with this. This is ancient. This is yours. This is like, This is also stripped away from all that culture. It's something that is like in your lineage from your people, like gave me like a kind of ancestral like root, with all this. And this is also happening like in Eretz Yisrael, like on the land, and like there's that whole aspect. And that was a turning point where I was like, okay, like I can choose to bring some of this in a beautiful way. I don't have, like, also had made this association that I can't include any of this in my life because it's bad for me. And I didn't have the possibility of like bringing in the beauty. And slowly, and I have to be very slowly because sometimes I see myself. Like these guys used to have a joke with me. I would go to shul sometimes. I go to this Breslov shul. There's a Nate's Minyan. I really just like this one song, that they sing in the morning. And like I would come in and they would sing it. I would be like for like 10 people like, that's it. I'm like, see you guys. I had this rule. I'm here as long as I feel good. As soon as I feel like not good and I'm only staying because like the shoulds start going, because those old tracks
come fast.
Oh my God. They're like so well etched into our brain. So I'm busting a move, I don't want to be around that. But a little bit more maturity and like discernment, like I can navigate that now and like bring in more and like enjoy it and appreciate it. And even some of the Lubavitch stuff that I found harder, like it's really kind of, it's part of my story and it's great. And I can like include it more and have choice around it and see the beauty in it and like leave some of the storying behind, or at least notice when it comes in. And that's been a very big gift because it's sad to like exclude things that are beautiful for you.
Do you think it would have been possible to reclaim the gift without ever shoving it in the cupboard?
No, I don't think so. No, I think that's, for me at least, maybe some people would have been able to. For me, the absolute separation needed to happen to kind of like, almost like solidify a connection. Like I needed enough time to have this connection that's just based about something else.
Right.
The purity of it all, the love.
Do you think that you had to eventually pull it out of the cupboard in order to justify shoving it in there?
No, I don't have to do anything. No, I don't feel like I had to. It was like a gift choice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've connected to that same idea on tefillin. I don't know why, but something so cool about my father, my grandfather, like going all the way back, praying in the same way. There was something that felt like small and big at the same time. Like I'm a small piece in a large chain and I'm connected to a big chain. And there was something about it that felt very empowering.
Yeah, I like this kind of the idea of the ancestral line and collective healing and being part of for me living in Israel and also being part of like, a certain part of the Jewish story and being on the land. It like allows me to kind of almost like go back to something maybe before even this whole religion thing started, something more primal, more organic, more like the land itself can be Torah,
Yeah.
Like my kid, my son, he goes to a nature school, which is really special. So it's based in nature. They do like the basic curriculum, but it's nature based, activities, outdoors, survival, all that stuff. And he asked me this a beautiful question once. He's 8 now. He's like, what's more important? Asked me in Hebrew, like, Ma yoter chashuv, Torah or Teva? What's more important to learn, Torah or nature? And I was thinking, what a beautiful question, because in Australia or America, like, Torah and nature, they're two different topics, like you might have to say Torah is more important than nature. But the nature in Israel, like when he's walking those rocks and learning about those herbs and feeling connected to the land, that's Torah too. That is Torah, and it's beautiful, so there's something that the land can offer that allows like, that has also allowed me to rest in like the Jewishness and the story and less attached to like the ritualistic or the meticulous observing of halacha and like being all finessed about it, because I feel the land can kind of hold me there. Like I'm not.
There's I think I heard it from Yaakov Kirsch. You know Yaakov Kirsch? Conscious
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating guy. I think it was him who shared it. So there's I may misquote some of the details, but I'll get the point right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a Gemara that says that if someone is learning and they stop learning Torah and they stop to look at a tree or nature, then they're chayiv misa or something, or chayiv karas or something like that. And like on its face, it's kind of like harsh. Like, what is this talking about?
Yeah.
So the explanation given is that it's not that if someone like looks at nature, it's if someone stops to look at nature, meaning if someone looks at nature as a stopping from learning Torah, like it's a separate thing from,
Right.
like then you deserve to be cut off. If you think nature and God and Torah are like
That's separate.
all one and the same thing, if they're separate, if you have to stop, then that's the problem.
That's
Not to look
beautiful.
at nature.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
Yeah.
resonates.
yeah, and I don't think it says only nature in Israel. I think
Yeah.
it's I think it's all of us. There is something about who was it? I think I heard about the Baal Shem Tov or something, that when he first went out to nature, like he went wherever he was living, he would spend a lot of time by himself
Mm-hmm.
in nature, and he told someone that the animals don't lie. Like, right, nature doesn't
okay.
lie
Yeah.
or something. Which, yeah, there's something, there's a lot to learn
From the natural world.
from here. When I moved out here, which is a much more nature-based living, it's not nature, but it's, much more nature than a city. I found how scary it was for me, like the complete dark. I wasn't used to it.
Oh, right. No
Even
street
walking around my
lights
own
and,
property, even walking around my own property at night, it took me like, what is this?
Right. What am I
Just
going
a
to bump
weird
into?
feeling.
Yeah.
This dark.
Yeah, it's like a little
know,
vulnerable.
Is there a snake there? Is it like what could possibly be in this place? Especially the darkness of nature, which we never experience in a city. We never know how dark it actually is.
Yeah.
At night, and there's been something very healing about being in that space. So yeah, the religion one is it's an interesting
It's a biggie.
journey, and the courage to search. I had this ayahuasca journey once, and it was like, all the details of my life are precise. And I was like why Chabad? Like, what is this about? Why Chabad? And there was something like that felt lost to me about Chabad today, but kind of in the lineage of it. It's just like freaking fearless warriors. I always say, like, we're going to do what we know we need to do, right? Regardless of like the risk of imprisonment, the risk of like the physical challenges, all of those. Like I was like sitting there thinking, like every single one of the Chabad rabbis were in prison. Like every single one. Like, what is this lineage that we're tapping into? And then it felt like, hey, in some way, even as a Baal Tshuva, right? Even in some way, I'm attached to this fearlessness and this boldness and this drive behind, this determination behind a mission. Like, and that comes from Chabad. And I felt very.
I see it in your hands. You're getting fired up. Yeah.
Right. But that warrior aspect of Chabad, it's true warrior.
It's true warrior.
True warrior.
It is. Yeah.
That warrior aspect of Chabad, like it's in the stories, but it's not felt like that.
Yeah, and it's beautiful to embrace it, like like coming back to again like this definition of healing. So if I'm also pushing away parts of my own heritage and identity because I'm uncomfortable with them, or people did things to me, or I created stories around them, then it's also not like whole and integrated.
Right. Back to that Thomas Hubel.
Yeah, and for me, like the Chabad, like I come from like Chabad, like legends. I have like people I felt they were in like wherever they sat in, in the gulags and Samarkand and in Siberia. And it's like that's wow, So like I've now and I can know that they don't need me to be anything other than myself. Like I can feel them like loving me too. And I've had moments in different healing processes, non-medicine related, where they allow you to invite your ancestors in and have conversations with them. And I even got like this vision of like my great-grandfather who's like epic chassid with Remendel Futterfass, his brother-in-law, like laughing at me, but like in an encouraging way, like do what you need to do. I was at some healing gathering. Do what you need to do. Like it's like go with your, and just also remember like where you come from.
Right.
And we love you. And like it allowed me to like to just do it in my own way, and like to not have to match up to any ideas or the culture, whatever it is, So it's been beautiful. This is still like fresh, So it's like it's alive. It's percolating still.
Yeah, someone once asked me to speak at it's like a conference. I don't know, like conference of psychedelics, but like a panel. I was like, okay, fine, I'll talk. It was like 2 years ago, and when I sat down at first, I said, I just want to acknowledge the craziness of this thing. I said, it's like someone who had sex twice and is going to give.
He's going to give relationship advice, right?
And they talk about like we're all virgins here. Like we're literally all
right.
right.
So fresh.
What a couple years of experiences you're dealing with, some of the deepest stuff. How does it work over time? But I think with healing, and I don't know where your wife is at with your journey today, but I imagine there's more peace there than there was a few years ago. Is both, I think, for ourselves to trust the process.
Yes.
And then for others, it's like trust the process, trust it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't always look pretty and moves in directions that are unwieldy, but I've shared a few times here. There's a teaching of the Rebbe on this idea that the Mizbeach the fire in the Mizbeach is never supposed to go out, right? And it says like Eish Tamid Tugat al Mizbeach. There should permanently be a fire in the Mizbeach. And Rashi says Tamid Afilu Betuma, Tamid Afilu B'Shabbos. Like it's always on. And my understanding of what the Rebbe was saying is that the Mizbeach, like the altar in the inner temple, is our heart, and like never let that fire go out. Even you see some impurity there, like trust the passion,
just
like
keep
trust,
it burning.
like it says like Tamid Afilu Betuma. Even when sometimes we see things are a little bit off. Someone shared with me a little bit ago, said he wants to do an event at the House of More. Like we have to talk about like the dangers and psychedelics and people doing medicine with the wrong people, and we can find it all in Judaism and everything else. And this guy's done a lot of psychedelics. And he's like, and I'm speaking from experience, just how dangerous the world is. And I said, okay, and how did you arrive at this clarity? How did you arrive at this brilliance? When with COVID, there was the protocol that was very common. I think Dr. Zelenko had this protocol. There was like a Z-Pack.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And the other was like hydroxychloroquine and zinc.
That's right, yeah.
So zinc is what we're trying to get in, right? Okay. We're trying to get zinc into our body. That's what fights the viruses. But oftentimes we take zinc, we pee it out. Like it doesn't stick. So you take hydroxychloroquine in order to open it up and then allow
absorb.
Right. Allow the body to absorb. That's my understanding of the way the protocol worked. So recently I've had this metaphor for psychedelics. It's like it's a hydroxychloroquine that allows the zinc, allows the Torah to penetrate. It's like till the Torah is coming in, it's going on.
Right.
I'm not saying for everyone. I'm saying for many of us, we've hardened hearts and stuffed brains. Is we need this to
crack it open.
And I understand that there are a lot of things to be concerned. As we learn, we should give those cautions and understand it. But it was interesting to me, like someone coming back full circle. I was like, you were just here. You were just here, living religious, hating religion, feeling depressed, feeling numb.
And you don't want to deprive people of their opportunity to discover what they need to discover either.
And today you can learn a mimer and you can feel the brilliance. How? Because you went to some dark places and you got cleaned up. And yes, there were some things good. So now let's figure out how to not bring that there. But you can't deprive, like they can't deprive someone the opportunity of.
Totally.
And then trust that fire in your heart. Like it will extinguish a lot of the things. I think both for ourselves to trust our own, and then for us watching. It's very scary to watch a loved one go
through something, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I want to share a little thing of how kind of the story came to full circle with the trusting. So I mean, there's all different details, but at a certain point, COVID did end, right? And this business kind of bounced back, this idea of this desert. Oh, yeah, because I had this Jeep and I had this licensing and I had this big summer and I was all of a sudden busy and full and surprise, I realized pretty soon, I don't really want to be doing this, And I'm and I knew deep inside somewhere, I had been to university, I'd spent time and courses and programs and have the qualifications. I'm meant to be helping people, and I'd just been primed. I went through such a a process and met the pain and I'm well primed. So I had this thing in my head. I don't even know where it came from. I said September the 1st, I'm becoming a therapist again, or maybe for the first time. This was the summer in Israel finishes September 1st. All the kids go back to school.
Okay, so we didn't drill down into that. So what happened so when you took medicine, you left that work?
I left the work. I was on and off unemployment. I wasn't really employed. I had a few jobs here and there. I did whatever I could.
But as far as counseling or that work?
No, I knew, just I took a break from these other things, I was not in a position to be helping people. And I knew that it's time to just figure out what's going on. I didn't know if I ever would again, you know? But that was not what was
to drop something means to drop it.
You got to drop it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Not drop it. That's why I asked that question earlier about putting the tefillin away with the
Right.
intention of putting it back in. It's like to drop something means to.
yeah, like whoever that guy Moish is gone. Like, done. You know, something else needs to happen.
Right.
And many beautiful people along the way who helped me that I met, and friends, and all kinds of, could talk about it for hours, but all these different beautiful things that happened and different hashgacha practices. And Hashem really found a way to send me the right people. And at a certain point, like things started picking up again, like people started coming and back to Israel, and the gates opened, and this started, I was like, oh, I could do this.
I mean, you're quite busy now.
Yeah, I'm busy now, but this was like with the tourism business, right? This is, I guess, now 3 years ago, something like that. Yeah, I'm trying to think. So I realized, like, I'm not like a Jeep driver. That's like not there's anything wrong with it. That's just not what I'm meant to be doing. For entertainment, So I said in my head, okay, I've got a summer booked. I've got lots of work. Baruch Hashem, like this is great. September 1st, I'm going back to the helping profession. Like I'm going to my calling. What did that mean? I had no idea. I didn't have a plan, right? And
You used an expression before. Sorry to cut you off, but you used an expression that may be a therapist for the first time.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
I mean that the first time I can really sit with you and sit with me at the same time. And like, there's nothing that I'm scared of in this interaction. No, you're not going to expose me that I'm like, I'm not sitting with like an imposter syndrome. I'm not sitting like afraid to like feel your pain or to be with you in an intimate way. Like I feel like I'm connected enough to myself that I can be with another human being. I can use the tools, but more than the tools, use the presence of whatever I'm like bringing into this time together. Yeah. Like I can actually do the work, so.
Okay, so September 1st.
September 1st, I wake up and I'm like, okay, God, so what happens now? I guess, and I thought I'll take one action to.
So September 1st, you shut down that business, done.
Well, I didn't shut it down. I just.
No more bookings.
No more booking. Yeah. I had it in my head. This is it, So I'm like, what do I do now? Say, hey, God, what do I do now? So the thought came to my mind, like send out a message to like an old client that you had. So I sent out a message to a guy that I was seeing when I was in my yeshiva. I was like, look, I'm working again. If you're, I didn't know what to do. So that just seemed like something to do. And he was in America. He was a former student who I had counseled at the time. And he actually responded, and we set up a Zoom for that day. So that was like pretty good. And then while that Zoom was happening, I had a missed call from someone else, and he runs like treatment centers. And I called him back after the session. He literally called me during that session. I said, what's up? He's like, hey, Moish, what are you up to right now? I'm like, go on, don't want to give anything away. He's like, look, we're looking for we have this new treatment center in Jerusalem. We're looking for a male therapist to work in recovery, addiction, and trauma. Are you available by any chance? September 1st, bang, had an interview. A week later, I started working there. And I just felt like, I don't know, like when I was ready,
things were moving.
It just like slid right in. It's like when you're ready, like the opportunity can just come your way. Like I didn't really do anything it just kind of happened. And from there, things moved, and now I'm on my own. That place closed down. So, yeah. And today it's like, Baruch Hashem, it's busy. I'm helping people. I'm working. And
so what are you doing? What are you doing today? And the reason I said busy is because I noticed when we put the event up for the House of More, it was very quick.
Yeah, it got fulfilled up. So today I split my time kind of, I'd say there's kind of like 3 branches in a way. So I have 3 days a week I see clients one-on-one. I only work with men. So
in Israel and outside, is it in person?
Yeah, in person and on Zoom. So I see people.
Do you see people in America?
I see people in America, like sort of mornings in America, late afternoons in Israel, and I see people in Jerusalem and in Tocoa. So that's like one big part of my work. Then I do groups. I have like a ongoing breathwork groups. Like we have one in Jerusalem, monthly in Jerusalem, that I do with a friend who has another healing organization. And
Like holotropic breathwork.
I call it tropic breathwork. Breathwork journeys, beautiful. We do beautiful
Breathwork
work.
ceremonies.
Breathwork, it's really a ceremony. It's amazing. It's really, really good. It's been great. Yeah, we built up a big community now, and they fill up every month. We run it once a month. And just started a group in Beit Shemesh as well, with another group there. And then I do, it doesn't have a set frequency, but I do other retreats and events. And also with the October 7th kind of aftermath, people can book me to run like a private retreat or like a customized healing experience kind of thing as well. So I have a lot of tools in the toolkit, and I can bring staff together as well. I have different people that I work with. And that kind of keeps me, you have the really intimate, deep work that I love, one-on-one, like really guiding people. I love groups, and also like like what we spoke about, the nature and the immersion and being in the desert. So between all that, and I play music, so between all that, it's been getting pretty busy. Yeah.
Does the nature work that you did as a business kind of connect to your retreats in some way?
Yeah, totally. So that's also like how great everything. I still have the Jeep. I still use it. Now I can take people out to the desert, and we'll go like drop in, do a breathwork session like in the middle of nowhere, and you can scream it out and let the desert hold you. It's amazing, So I bring in those elements, and I'll still do like if someone calls me, they want to do a Jeep expedition or something, but I have like a simple like filtration process. I just say I only offer like it's a wellness or healing oriented trip. And most people just drop out after that. And then occasionally someone's like, that sounds amazing. I'm like, yeah, you're my guy. Let's go, Right. So that's been beautiful to be able to.
Yeah, I asked that question because of the precision of our journey starts kind of coming into focus at some point.
Yeah, and I see it with the music as well. Like I said, okay, I don't want to be on a stage anymore. I don't want to feel like I need to be seen. But I worked for years as a musician, and it's an incredible skill.
That can't be an accident.
Exactly, and it's an offering, and I see how like knowing how to work with music and energy that I learned in weddings, like there's nothing more chaotic than a Lubavitch wedding. You need to know how to work with that energy. So I bring that into the breath work. You know how to work with music and a group. Like all the skills are transferable, and kind of leading to this place where now it's like it feels much more whole, like and integrated that I can,
right. And you went here as a way to kind of cement that point of trusting the process, both for oneself and others.
Yeah, absolutely. And to trust the process, and to know like it's not necessarily going to be quick. Like I see it a lot. I see it with the breath work. Like people say, I want a breakthrough. That's what they want coming in. That's great that you want that. That's beautiful. Tell me about that, But that's not something we can like deliver on demand, It's beautiful when it happens, but it's like, they say like od sad, in Hebrew, like one more step, like another opening, another possibility, and learn another little angle about yourself. Like the healing is a path we get to work on. It's not like, okay, I got it, I'm fully healed. Like, I don't feel like that's what this is really all about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw David Hawkins. Is that his name? You familiar with him?
Yeah, I know the name, but not familiar with.
There's a lot of books. I was reading one over the weekend, Letting Go, like the pathway of surrender. He's a really interesting guy, a kinesiologist who mixes a lot of spiritual concepts into these things. And he spoke about the process of, he talks about consciousness a lot. So like at lower levels of consciousness, we measure ourselves by what we have. The nice cars, the job, the house, whatever, the stuff, or even his kids, the toys, the girlfriend, whatever. Right.
Like
what we have.
Objects. Yeah.
Yes. And then further up kind of that scale of consciousness is what we're doing. Am I doing this or am I doing that? And then further beyond that is how we're being. Right. And eventually that's what we're trying to get to. Like, I don't know if you said it before we turned on the mics or afterwards, is that the impact you're going to have on the room is who you are.
Yes. That's what you bring. I really believe it. Like the healing is, you want to bring that self into the room and communicate that safety, not through words. Oh, you're safe now. No, it's not. Or this is a safe space. Well, how does it feel? How's it landing? How do we create that together? And then things can kind of like melt a little bit or get more comfortable, and then it can emerge.
Yeah, Mayor and I talk about that on the retreats. It was something that came from him, but we remind ourselves is that like there's nothing we can do on the retreats. Like like once the retreat starts, it's whatever we did before. That like now here we are. We can be more present or less. We can be distracted, but like we can't magically come up with something new here. It's the work we did before is going to be reflective in the retreat as long as we're here.
Yeah.
We're fully here.
Yeah, I actually heard you say that. I really liked it. I resonated with that. I heard it you must have mentioned on a podcast
Yeah,
somewhere.
possibly. Yeah, some ideas
it was
we keep
beautiful.
repeating.
That was
Yeah,
a
Mayor
beautiful
shared
thing.
that. Mayor shared that because, for him, like that's a lot of what he brings. Like he has that performer side of him. And it's similar to kind of your story where you kind of see how things, come together. And it's okay, like what does this performer right thing have to do with healing? And then seeing how, hey, that skill and ability to really create a container and hold a space is very, very useful for someone to stand up in front of a room. And sometimes it could be performative.
Yeah.
Right. But the shadow side of performative is could become kind of dependent on that, like the response or the accolades or the
right. Like I need the audience feedback. Yeah.
Right. Like how is this received?
Right.
Versus, how did I show up like that? Because the performer is looking for the response, right? On that level. So it's okay, you've developed that skill, and how do you use it here? And he shared that he had done a medicine journey just before a retreat, and he's like, "There's nothing for me to do. There's really nothing for me to do. We're coming. The sum total of all of the work we've done together is coming into this room, and there's nothing I can do on the retreat itself." When he shared that with me, it really solidified, because sometimes we could get into those.
Yeah, and you think it comes back to like, okay, it's me. I'm the change agent, and then.
For good or for bad, something happens. You want to take credit, something doesn't. It's
right,
blame,
you might take the fall. Yeah, and you also don't know, like, you don't always see maybe the result of it, and maybe you'll get maybe it'll be in a few years someone will say, like, you'll think this person didn't get something, or it wasn't so meaningful, or I got this thing that happened. We had a guy in the treatment center who it didn't work out for whatever. He was unhappy. It didn't work out well. And then you just don't know what happened. Like, what happened to this guy? And then somehow, I guess it wasn't very professional, but somehow someone told me that they met him, and they sent back and said, like, I got some like really just beautiful feedback that like there was this one place in the treatment, and when he was with me that was kind or loving or whatever it was. I don't know, whatever it was, but that something there touched him, and you never know. Right. And that was and that was all he got. And that maybe it's not all he got, but that was one thing that he did get. And you don't always get that boomerang, back. But when you do, it's like so beautiful to just like, oh, okay, like, and you don't know when you plant a seed when it's gonna germinate. And that can also be really helpful in like not having to take responsibility for other people's process, to really just say, okay, so I'm here with you right now. Let's do what we can do.
Right. When I did the first retreat, I asked my wife for help with food, and she said, well, if you want my help, there's only like one way I know how to do it. Like I'm not buying food that I wouldn't eat myself. So it may be a little more expensive, but that's the way we're going to do it. I said, well, I want your help. So however you do it is good for me. So, and for her, it's very important, like all real food, all organic, like really understanding every ingredient behind everything. If it can't decompose outside your body, it's not decomposing in your body. Right. If it can last on the shelf for 8 years, it's not like what do you think's happening suddenly
inside you?
Inside you. So it's real food, clean food, careful with the kinds of oils, all sorts of stuff. Right? She's taking this fairly deep. It might not look like it, outside, but I assure you, all organic, grass fed. Like our milk is from the cow. As much as possible, everything very, very real food. And one guy, after one of the adamas, he said like what he took from it, because he's like, it was probably the first time in his life he said, I ate just real food for 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
And he's like, I felt different. And that was his takeaway. And it's so interesting. Like for me, it was like, wow, all of his preparation and work and medicine and knows what, that myself, Omar, and Mayor come and try to bring to the space. And what was the guy's takeaway?
Salad.
Eat real food. But sometimes that's all we need. Simple teachings.
Yeah.
As we were sharing, there was one story that came to me as a teenager that I thought to share, and then we'll wind this down.
Yeah.
But when I was like 14 or 15, there was this part of me that I couldn't dress like the other kids. I couldn't do it. And there was we're supposed to wear a white shirt, we're supposed to wear black pants, but I needed in some way, whatever. There's something inside me that just, I don't know. I'm not not like one of a group,
Yeah.
just I resisted it strongly. So I found a jacket that kind of pushed the envelope, or a hat that kind of pushed the envelope, but I was in yeshiva. And it was one teacher like once sat me down like, why do you have to do this? Why do you have to like,
I want to have to be different.
yeah, why do
kind
you have to be
of,
different? Why do you have to push this? And I kind of like retorted quickly. I said, I don't understand. You want to teach us conformity here, right? Teach us to be like everyone else here. But somehow when I walk out the door, I'm supposed to be so comfortable being different. Like, what are we looking for? What are we trying to change? We're trying to send some guy out in the world and say, be a free thinker.
Stand on your own. Yeah.
But in here, when someone starts pushing up against the trends a little bit and pushing up against some of these limits, it's like, why can't you be like everyone else?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that translate out there, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is happening to the guy who wants to be like everyone else when he walks into university, when he walks into any of these environments that his life may take him? So I don't know. I think a lot of the themes that we've touched on is really, it's like trusting the process, but it's also like trusting the minutia, like the level of details within the process. It's not accidental. And what you spoke about, that definition of healing, Thomas, was like bringing all of our parts back together. It was like the people who we thought shouldn't be in our life.
That's right.
Yeah,
all that stuff.
Like all of that comes back in some beautiful way. Okay, final thoughts, or tie this all together?
Yeah, just that. Yeah, just to, the final just reflection as I'm thinking about, my own story, sharing with you, but also like encouraging people, is just like trusting in this path and knowing that it is a path, and also knowing how to really reach out for help.
Ask for help.
Ask for help. Oh my God, it's so hard. Yeah. And like training, and just like taking out the stigma. And I hope like, I feel like maybe there are some parts of me like, did I like overshare, and I'm like just sitting with like, I'm hoping that this is helpful for someone out there, and that, that the message resonates, and I feel that this movement that's happening in the Frum community is so beautiful, of like, okay, we're wanting to go through, it might be uncomfortable, and there's like an unearthing and there's a shifting, but like, it's so beautiful and necessary, and it's a maturing, and it's something that's it's not the end destination, but it's something that is being birthed, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of all of this.
Yeah, what's clear is that it's necessary. That's for sure. What's clear is that necessary. Like we'd really have to ignore a lot of the data in front of us to suggest that a radical change isn't necessary. If you think just practically, I mean, from like there's a stated intention, right? We have a yeshiva, and the goal is to keep everyone religious, let's say.
Right. Yeah.
And like you're failing on your stated intentions.
Right.
Right. Like
so even what you set out to do isn't working anyway.
Isn't working. So at what point don't you like recover? Say there's something missing. And for me, the amount of kids who felt alienated from yeshiva, like they weren't from, they weren't, and then suddenly their life takes on the most spiritual bend. And I was thinking, like, if tefillin is what we claim tefillin to be, if Shabbos is what we claim Shabbos to be, if Judaism is claim, right, then it'll come back around. Like, trust it.
You can trust it. Yeah.
It'll come
trust
back
it
around.
to work. Yeah.
Yeah. Trust it to do its thing. So thank you so much for coming out
Thank you.
here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Sharing your gifts last night. I didn't experience the cooking process, but I experienced the result. Like I came towards the end of it, I saw you
got the baked cake.
I saw the energy in the space, and I felt it, and it was a beautiful togetherness, softness in the room, and people wanted to hang out afterwards, which is always
it's a good sign.
A good sign, and then to bring out others as well. I was very inspired by the one individual who sang, and with each song, his voice got a little more louder and bolder and prouder. I speak to him afterwards, and I said, because people need role models, and like he came to our retreat, and it's like something wakes up inside him. Let's say that's okay. Like I want to give back to, I want to share, but it felt like the models that he had between me, Mayor, and Omar, like he couldn't see himself in either of us.
In that kind of role. Yeah.
Right. But then I felt like when he was seeing you, I was already noticing him before. I was almost going to offer him the guitar before he asked for it. I wasn't sure if I should or not. Like I'd come late. I'm like, how much do I want to like interject in this space? But I was already seeing like that link is possible for him to see okay, if I want to do something in healing and I have this gift, like this is a way that it could.
That I can bring myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that it brought it out afterwards, like that he had that courage is a good sign, because it's like we're trying to create leaders, not to create people who.
Definitely not trying to create gurus, you know.
What?
We don't want to create gurus. We want everyone to like find their place and
100%.
their niche, and like it's like,
right.
What's that? So such a beautiful moment where it's like, oh my God, I can do this. And
Right,
it's like
exactly.
roring by the end, you know. It was amazing, so beautiful.
Yeah, so that was beautiful. And then here, just to be open and honest and real with me, with us, knowing that this does go.
Yeah,
this does go out there.
Go into the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and my experience with it is that there's an energy that's created in the space, and there was something that was felt. I mean, you can feel it. I can feel it. We both know we feel it. And I have no doubt that those who listen in, pay attention to what we said.
To the minutiae.
Pay attention to the feeling from it. They'll get it too. They'll get infected with it. It's been positive for me. It seems to be positive for you. And I hope it's positive for those who tune in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.